So right off the bat, this movie sucks. This is such a bad movie, objectively. What did you think of it?
Wow, you're coming out swinging. I wasn't anticipating that.
Oh yeah.
It's like not that bad. It's like fine or bad,
That's
but
insane.
okay. Well, this is We Want to Watch. My name's Lane,
My name's Ricky.
and this week we're coming in hot. We're right off the bat. We're getting right into it.
We're hotter than the fucking Fire Nation's flames. All right.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Ricky's got way more energy than me about this already, which is a change. And this week we're talking about The Last Airbender from 2010, the M. Night Shyamalan live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon. This was a Lane's frame. I guess we're just getting... This is crazy. I feel like all off kilter.
I've got thoughts.
I can tell.
I've got so many thoughts. I gotta get them out.
Did you take notes? I know you don't normally take notes.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah,
That's
I did.
fucking crazy. Yep. Okay. So I picked this movie. This was Elaine's frame. I picked this because I had not seen it, although I had seen the original cartoon. And, the new one came out, the new live-action TV show, just dropped like a couple weeks ago. And it brought up a lot of discourse, kind of reminded me of this adaptation. It's been on my mind since we started this podcast as one that I wanted to watch, which is the premise of this show. But yeah, so go ahead, Ricky. You go ahead. You want a monologue? I can hear it.
I'll say I wrote down as I was watching. I just was typing shit into my phone, and I'm not getting an exact character count here. Oh, it's looking like 9,000. I thought I wrote more than that.
Are you serious? You wrote 9,000 characters?
9,226. Yeah.
You wrote more than the Wikipedia page probably for this movie. there's you wrote more words than are in the movie.
So that's one of the big things. That's one of the big problems I have with the movie. The dialogue. I think the dialogue is horrible.
Okay, all right. We gotta scale it back a little bit. We gotta set the table.
I'll start from the beginning. All right?
Okay, we gotta.
No.
I am walking around.
From the beginning.
I'm the waiter. You burst into the restaurant and started bouncing off the walls, and I'm like, let me put down the tablecloth.
I need a steak medium well.
You need the knife.
Would you like a table first,
I
sir?
haven't fiddled up your water. Okay,
so I'm hearing somebody at the table wants a steak medium well.
Medium well.
Anyway.
Wait, do you order your steak medium well?
No, I would get a burger medium well, maybe. I'd get steaks mid rare. That's just me personally, but I don't really trust ground meat as much. Anyway,
okay. So, all right, slow your roll, just 10%.
All right.
I wanted to know what's your relationship with this franchise? Set the stage a little here before we dive right in.
So big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Controversially, I also liked The Legend of Korra upon a rewatch.
Okay.
I will say that it has a bunch of pacing problems. I think that the first season should have been the last. It makes a lot more sense that there would have been a sort of anti-Bender sentiment after seeing the damage done to the world by the Benders, and it would have made a lot more sense for Korra to sort of navigate that, and it would have been a lot more interesting, right? There's a lot of things that they could have done to make that series more interesting, and they chose not to. But we're not gonna talk about that, right? We're here to talk about the movie, which is an offensive adaptation. Not only do they misinterpret all of the themes of the show and just straight up misinterpreting scenes, I feel like what they're really doing is, I feel like they didn't watch this series. Nobody who had watched the series actively worked on the script. It was just all word of mouth. So, some things got transferred with, perfect clarity. He's yeah, I remember a scene, they were, on a boat, and he ran and jumped and, did the little glider thing. Well, it was pretty cool. And they're all right, well, we need that in the series, 100%, right?
Okay, hang on.
And then they just miss other things. What's up? Okay, yeah.
So, why do you like the cartoon so much? What? I understand that people like the cartoon. What is it that, you like about it? You're it's good. I like the action.
Not just that. So, I mean, there's a number of things that I think they do right. I think the bending looks great, right? In terms of the animation, it seems cohesive with the characters' movements, which are both expressive and sort of they carry that martial arts style, which is enjoyable. it doesn't talk down to its audience. Like the series itself took a lot of themes and ideas, which I think even some adults maybe never grappled with. But I mean, I don't know. Not going to get into that. And it presented them well to kids, right? But just sort of like some of the like golden era or the Renaissance age of like Disney movies, it didn't feel the need to talk down to its audience too much. It's also a really interesting blend of like some sort of like Eastern ideologies and like mythologies into a very like Western format.
So hold on to that, what you just said there. You said you said that this movie is offensive, and you said that last week, and I was like,
yeah.
So I think setting aside the race of like all of the cast here, which is egregiously bad.
Right. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Right.
Setting aside
acknowledge that. Go on.
Yeah. Setting aside that, which we'll talk about, setting aside like the offensiveness of that, do you think that this like offends the source material too? Like, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. That just is so insane to me. Like, I don't know. Just to draw a comparison. Like, I know a lot of people are really like passionate about the original cartoon, which I get. Like, I watched it in 2020, like quarantine. I caught up on it finally, I think. And then, it's good. Like, I agree. It's great. Mm-hmm. But the way that people cling to that, and this is the best comparison I could make. Like, the Mario movie isn't good, right? Like, it's a bad adaptation. I know that I like bring up the fucking Mario movie every week.
I was the one who did it last week. You were trying to veer me away from it.
But I'm going to make this succinct. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's poorly written. Whatever. Like it's kind of shallow. Whatever.
Right.
It's not offensive. Like, it's not. I don't think of it as like it's so like offensive that they did this to my property, like my intellectual cartoon. I don't, or you know what I mean? Like,
I
think that's such a strange, obsessive word, and I'm as obsessed with Mario as a person gets. I think, like, looking around my desk right now, just the idea that something can be like offensive to my fan thing or like offensive to the fans is bizarre. I don't know. I want to know more about what you're saying. So respond to that before I keep monologuing.
So I think, and I mean, part of it comes down to the fact that they have to compress it for a movie, but what they cut they cut a few things which I think they need to include. They needed to move things around in order to create more interesting characterization. And we can get into that, specifically between the Zhao and Zuko dynamic, which they obviously wanted to keep in the movie, but they never really wanted to flesh out. They never wanted to commit to that. The scene at the end is, like, the most egregious, honestly. That just locked it in for me. Where they, all of the waterbending tribes, like, everyone in the waterbending tribe bows down to Aang, right? Ong. Even down to the way that they like, in the original show, right, like, they just called each other Aang, Sokka, Katara.
Yeah.
Not only do we not really get their names here, like Princess Yue also just doesn't get a name. She is the princess.
No, I'm pretty sure they say her name. I'm almost certain that when Katara introduces her, she says her name in the narration, which the narration is bad, but
the narration is bad. Yeah.
Yeah. That's because this movie is like you're saying, it's rushed. It's trying to do a whole season of TV, so they're like, we'll just do this forced narration, which isn't even really necessary for 90% of it. But anyway, continue.
Right. They have a bad habit of telling, not showing, and then sometimes they include things in exposition that they're telling, not showing, which they're eventually going to do a scene about, right? Whether it be a flashback or just like straight up a scene, which it's like, okay, well, I already got that from what's happening on the screen. You don't need to explicitly state it, right? So this movie kind of talks down to its audience. I feel like it's not taking its source material seriously, or the audience that's viewing it seriously. Yeah. Right. But like also the scene at the end where they all bow down to Aang, that's completely misinterpreting what the intent of the original scene was, right?
Okay. Like so stop there, because I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Who cares what the original scene's intent was? Like really, like, I don't know. Again, I've watched this show once, haven't revisited it since. but like the whole point of adapting whatever to a different medium is a different interpretation. Like, what is the point of doing the same thing? And like the slavish devotion to like honoring the source material is why we get the MCU and like Star Wars being bullshit. Like, and like people reacting negatively when anything dares to like veer off the rails of my sacred texts. Yeah, who cares, right?
Oh, all right, fine. But I don't think that the changes that they made were...
That's a different argument. Good.
Really were interesting, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that they were good. I don't think that they were interesting. And I think that the way that they were changed, right, it's sort of like a mocking facsimile of what the original was, right?
Do you think
and like,
so?
I think the only thing that we can... Yeah, it does sort of feel mocking at points to me.
Really ill intent. Like,
yeah, it literally. I mean, it feels like cruel, right?
Cruel because,
and I mean, also, what else are you supposed to compare it to, right? As
I'm
a movie, it doesn't stand on its own merits.
So here's the thing: I'm not saying you can't draw comparisons. Like, of course, that's the whole point. But like to be like, well, they did it wrong because actually is just a really strange comparison to make. You can say like, oh, it's like emphasizing these Orientalist themes or imagery, and that's really bad in comparison. Like those are, but if you just want to be like, the difference is that these characters are supposed to be like allies instead of like whatever, like acolytes of the Avatar. Like those, like that's, I mean, I don't know. It's like, obviously this is a different like they're going for something different. There's no humor in this movie.
Right.
Like they change a ton of stuff. Like, of course there's comparisons to be made, but like, why just upset yourself by comparing it to the cartoon? It just, or like to that extent, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, okay, I get that. But also, I mean, so the scene where Zuko gets burned by his father, right? They add in the line where Ozai calls out to Azula and essentially says like, "Hey, come off, you burn this kid's face."
Yeah.
And she walks up and goes, "Yes, father," and she's like smiling and everything. So, I mean, again, it's sort of misinterpreting intent of that scene, right? I mean, just because there is a source material to compare it to, right? It's the same thing as like, I don't know, like the Harry Potter movies and the books, right? The people are obviously going to compare the movies to the books because there's a source material there to work off of. And if you're not going to like faithfully recreate the source material, then the changes that you make have to sort of be in the same spirit or like make sense within the world.
Wait, but why? Like what? Like why? Why do they have to do that? Because like I'm thinking of like something that Shakespeare, for example, like just as an example.
Right.
People do crazy shit to Shakespeare all the fuck, and I'm not comparing Harry Potter to Shakespeare here, but people will explicitly go out of their way to change things to make commentary about the text, right? Like if you change all of the cast of like Hamlet or Othello to be like gender bent or like an all black cast or like actually anyway, I'm not going to get into it, but like.
Well, like the modern day Romeo and Juliet, right? Like that was a great movie.
Sure,
and a good adaptation as well.
Right. And people criticize that though because they're like, well, this is misinterpreting it because really it's supposed to be making fun of these kids, but this is taking it seriously. It's like, okay, so what? Do you think Shakespeare gives a fuck? Like he's fucking dead, and who cares? Like it's so irritating to hear people get mad, and I think too, part of why this upsets me so much, or like is so. Yeah, upsetting to me is because this is the kind of argument that people make to like, well, why would you make a black Ariel Little Mermaid? Like, you know what I mean? I know that you're not like saying, that kind of racist shit, but I think that kind of like, again, slavish devotion to whatever the written text is or whatever the original text is the kind of thing that gets people, it's kind of a conservative way of approaching your media of like, oh, like my thing has to be exactly the way that they intended, that the author intended it, and it has to be exactly the way I felt when I was 12, or else it's bad. And I don't know. It's like to have more creativity there, have more of an open mind. And I'm not saying this movie's good. I think this movie's pretty bad, but it's not like offensive. And it's setting aside the race stuff. Like it's not like offensively bad because, which, yeah. Here's a.
The race stuff is pretty offensive. And
the
like
race
very
stuff is
bad.
crazy. Yeah,
actually nuts. Yeah.
So I don't know if you know who Nicola Peltz is, the actress who plays Katara. It was crazy to see her.
No, I didn't know her, but also I was like, that's not Katara.
Well,
I don't
sure.
know why they're doing this.
So I think so everything I've read about this movie, like behind the scenes, like the production of it, indicates that her casting is kind of the source of all of the race issues with this movie. So basically, one of the financiers of this movie, she is the daughter of a billionaire. And so one of the financiers of this movie basically strong-armed Shyamalan and like the producers, Kathleen Kennedy's, into casting her, basically. So
right. I mean, Shyamalan got strong-armed into writing this whole thing. Like, he did not want to do this, right?
Yeah.
Straight up.
Well, yeah, I feel like he did probably want to do it at first, and then, eventually it was like, I'll just collect my check, fuck this. But
right.
yeah, but her dad is like, like, I don't think he's the owner of Wendy's, but he's like a chairman at Wendy's or a board member or something. Like, he's a high, he's like a very, very influential man.
He's getting money. He's got money.
So I guess, and she's now married to David Beckham's son.
Nice.
And has had crazy plastic surgery since the creation of this movie, but that is beside the point. But so her casting basically meant that all of the Water Tribe had to be white to kind of match her, or like at least Sokka did. And so then, that's why they're white. And then of course the lead kid, he is also white, and I think that's basically like, he looks kind of like Aang, I guess, and he has like martial arts skills. So I guess like then it was like, oh fuck, I guess we got to cast somebody as like a non-white character, and that's why we ended up with Zuko as Dev Patel. So
right,
but again,
it's
still incredibly like offensive casting. That is definitely the one thing about this movie I would call offensive.
I mean, yeah, pretty distinctly offensive. I think the reason I find it offensive to the source material, right, and the reason why I think that that's a fine sort of analogy to make, or like a fine thing to say, is that like
the source
it's something
material
that I
doesn't
enjoy.
Have feelings. Like,
right,
you
but I
feel
do,
offended.
and it's I do feel offended.
Right,
yeah.
That's different than the source material, and to be offended by something not be Ricky, that's crazy.
I mean, just because it's something that I enjoy, and I feel like it A, was not taken seriously, and B, I mean, it just feels like it wasn't taken seriously by anyone there. And like, if you're going to go to the lengths to like adapt a movie, why not do it well, right?
I mean, that's because movies don't have to be good to make money, I think, is part of the reason. I also think there was a lot, I don't think that there was bad intention here. I do think that like, as far as the writing and like the production and all of that, like, I don't think anybody sat to the side and was like, we're going to milk these dumbass nerd kids for all of their money. I think that it was just like, there's probably too many cooks in the kitchen. They, there were probably some folks who hadn't seen the original or like whatever. And then, like meddling / a rushed production. Because this movie came out like 3 or 4 years after the show ended, I think. Like the show's from like 2006, right? So they were probably like, oh, fuck, we got to get this out while it's hot and fresh. You know what I mean? And so I just, again, and people come for M. Night Shyamalan kind of unfairly. Again, he has a lot of
I don't think it was only
movies.
His failure here.
No,
right?
of course
like,
not.
I think
but
that there was a lot of people involved.
But the vitriol against him as a director, I think, is way disproportionate, especially at this time. He was kind of like in his fallow period here. And so I think, again, I think the reaction to this movie is outsized. Like this isn't even the worst movie I've seen like this month. Like, I don't know.
That's crazy. This is easily the worst movie I've seen this month.
It's again, it's not that bad. Well, I've seen a lot more movies.
It's pretty bad.
It's
pretty bad, bro.
It's bad, but it's not any worse than like any other mid 2000s action kids movie. Like this isn't worse than like, I don't know, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, or like, I don't know, the fucking Mortal Kombat movies. Like again, I'm just thinking
I don't know. I haven't seen either of them. So, but
I'm just saying, like, I don't think there's anything about this movie that is like production wise, like the actual contents of the movie. If you separate it from the source material and just watch it as a movie, it's not like it's the deranged fans that are like, again, think this movie like shit on their face, like in their sleep,
I'll say even as a movie, it's still pretty bad.
I agree with you, but it's not like the worst movie ever made, which people say it is, and that's just, I mean, that's obnoxious. Like that's silly, like,
right.
to say that. That's,
I mean,
that's
I'd say
people
it's
talking
damn
from
near
their
close.
feelings.
To be honest, it's probably like one of the worst movies that I've ever seen. It's like bottom 10.
That's because you've seen like
pretty easily.
You've seen 15 movies.
No, I've definitely seen minimum 100. Right?
Okay,
like,
so that's not that. I mean, sure, that's still not.
And
that
this is like easily
bad.
bottom 10.
I don't
right?
know, man.
Bottom 5, honestly. It's like it's. Just, you can't be like, oh, like it's in the like bottom 5 percentile. That's not that bad. It's like, no, it's pretty fucking bad.
I'm not
right?
okay. I think saying that this is the bottom 5% of movies is even crazy. There's a lot of movies out there, and there's a lot of
right.
movies
Not
that
maybe not of all movies ever made, right?
Even
like,
wide
we go
release
all throughout
movies.
time, but
like this is probably better than a handful of MCU movies. Like this is definitely better than like
I don't know about that.
like what is bad about it? That you like setting aside
the dialogue
all of
is horrible.
I agree with
every
you.
scene of dialogue
So is fucking
just
MCU.
horrendous. Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
Like, is this movie any better or any worse than like Aragon? You know what I mean? Or like,
so like I mean, right? That's
like
I
one
mean
of
that's
the
a great
Narnia movies?
question too.
yeah,
That's a great question because okay, the Narnia movies I actually thought were good. Because they're at least interesting. Aragon was a really bad adaptation, but like judged without source material, it's an okay movie. Nothing crazy about it. And I'm a big Aragon guy. Again, they don't really like they don't take the source material and like they're not like openly deranged with how they're adapting it with Aragon.
okay, but set
with
that
Narnia.
aside. Set that aside.
Okay.
Okay, think of like
Right.
Transformers. Like, is this worse than
Yeah,
a Transformers
sick.
movie? I don't believe it. I do not believe.
You think that
this
the
movie...
Transformers movies are worse than this? Have you seen the Transformers movies?
No, I'm just saying like of the clips.
Wait, but you
I've
haven't seen them. Why are you?
No,
why
I'm just
are
saying
you
like
comparing them?
because I think those are comparable in the sense of like big action spectacle that's probably really poorly written, probably uninspired
Right.
direction, probably poor acting. It's like
Right.
so those are the same. I mean, those are all the
And they're
things
still
that are
much
bad.
better.
But what? Why? Because
Which is crazy.
they don't make you
the
feel
action
bad
scenes
about
are-
your cartoon. Like
No, the action scenes are actually good, right? So like all of the bending in the series, there's 3 scenes where the bending looks like decent, right? Where it looks like they actually put money towards it at all, right? Yeah, no.
no, I mean I think most of them are fine. I think most of the action scenes in this movie are like nothing crazy, but not that bad. Like they're not like the scene where the earthbending like or the earthbenders are broken out of the prison or like they're in the
Yeah.
the work camp or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
that was kind of cool. Like it was one take. Like it looked good. You know, whatever. I mean, like it was fine.
I mean, okay, I didn't think that looked very good at all, to be honest with you. I just was not a fan of that.
I thought
the
it was
fact
you
that-
know it was it had choices made. Like they it
had-
wasn't just
it had
like
distinct choices
boring.
made. So one of my biggest problems, and like that scene does a lot of it, is the way that they disconnect. I mean, they essentially make it so that bending is like a dance, which
Yeah, like martial arts kind of. Yeah, that's the whole point, right?
right, but they're not connected, right? Where it's just like, oh, we'll do the movement and then something also happens, right? But like those two things don't feel connected.
Oh, I didn't feel that way at all. I thought it was very clear what they were trying to go for with like how the moves corresponded to what the benders were doing, especially the different kinds of bending, which I know is part of the show's like appeal is that, you know, the different like martial arts correspond to different types of like the different kingdoms and the different types of whatever material. What is it
Right.
called? Just bending. So like,
Just bending,
I don't know.
yeah.
I felt like that was,
Bending the elements, they call it. But
yeah.
I mean,
Like, of
okay.
course, it's not going to look as good
I mean,
as the
agree
cartoon,
to disagree, I guess.
right? Like, because
No,
the cartoon
and I get
has,
that. Well, yeah, the cartoon is definitely it's easier, it's more malleable. It's easier for them to pull that sort of stuff off.
and it has more time. Part of why this movie sucks, right, is
Right.
because it doesn't have time to let anything establish. Like, they made poor choices by condensing like a book and a half of the TV or a season and a half of the TV show
Right.
into.
I think
one
there's a
movie.
right way that they could have done this, though, right?
Not
And
without
I
making
think
a
that-
3-hour movie, I don't think. Which, I mean, if this movie came out today, it would be a 3-hour movie. But, you know,
Right.
they want to keep it a minute 40 so that they can play it 20 times at the, you know, Cineplex, like a day. Like, that's the point.
Right, I get that.
And that's a
So-
bad choice, you know, but...
Right, I think there's certain stuff that they could have cut. So I'll say I didn't like the spirit dragon as the conduit for Aang to learn about like what's happened. or like about what's happening. It like as a plot device, I didn't like the Spirit Dragon. I thought that they needed to include the pirates if they were going to work with the Zuko Zhao or with the Zhao Zuko sort of duality thing, which they didn't do, and so it sort of seems choppy. It doesn't really make much sense when Zuko gets in his quote unquote accident, which isn't really shown. That's off screened. I don't like the amount of excess lore that they drop at random points, which is sort of a nod to the show, but it's all like spoken exposition, and it doesn't actually have any bearing on what's happening in the movie. And I mean, it kind of feels like they were maybe trying to gear up for another movie after this.
Oh, they definitely
which
were.
Never happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean,
Right.
you can tell that with the Azula and Ozai conversation at the end. I think Ozai probably shouldn't have been shown really at all throughout this movie, except maybe at the very end. The conversations that Zhao has with Ozai don't make any sense, because essentially Zhao has to head back into the Fire Nation every single time and then head back to the front lines. And the passage of time is shown very poorly all throughout the movie. It doesn't really carry any weight, and it doesn't really make much sense.
Sure, but if you're coming to this movie, I mean, you're not going to
yeah,
think
like
about,
I'm bringing bad
like,
vibes to the movie, right?
I was going
Like,
to say, yeah, you came in, yeah, like, of course you're going to be like, well, technically this season of TV was supposed to take place over 6 months, and really it only took place over 2 months. Like, yeah, of course it's
well, no,
gonna be, like,
not even that. Like it doesn't make sense, right? Like when you're watching it, so
Okay, hang on, because this movie is about people who shoot fire, and there's like a magical kid who is entrapped in ice for 100 years. Like, this movie doesn't
Right.
make sense. Like, of course, you have
No,
to
that's
suspend
fine.
disbelief.
Right. No, I can suspend disbelief, but I can't suspend disbelief. So like when they're going through and they're like clearing out villages, yada yada, and they have that montage, right? After the montage, they have the most insane dialogue or like trialogue between Sokka, Katara, and Aang,
Trialogue?
right?
Wait.
Yeah, you like that one?
I do.
But do you know what scene I'm talking about? Where they're like, "Oh hey," Sokka essentially says, "Hey, like, why don't we go through the Earth Nation and change the course of the war?" Right? I think they're shown doing that maybe once or twice after that. It's the fact that it comes immediately after a montage of them doing that exact thing, right?
Well, yeah, because it's supposed to show that Sokka. I feel like if anything, that is one of the lines that kind of tries to paint Sokka as the eventual like war strategist that he becomes in the show. Like, I
Right.
feel like that is supposed to be like, oh, he's coming up with this idea like of greater strategy. Like I
Right.
I feel
And
like
it's like the
actually
only thing that
it's
he
clunky, but
did.
the whole movie's clunky. So like I feel like
The
that's
whole movie is very clunky. It's
Yeah.
it's just put in the wrong spot. Why was it not put before the montage? Like if
I
you're
feel
going
like
to do
you are
a montage,
you are
of them
picking
figuring
nits
out,
that you have never nitpicked before. Like you are.
it just doesn't make sense as a movie. Like I don't know.
I think this
Maybe-
makes perfect sense as a movie. This is a bad movie, but it's not like I don't know, man. We're gonna have to watch some like bad movies. I think to
So all right, well let's
compare
get back
this
to the
to.
bending. Let's get back to the bending.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. You're like fiery here. You're like mad as hell.
I am. Yeah.
I
yeah.
can tell.
So like I honestly think that some of the airbending looks pretty cool. I feel like they sort of got that, right? Like they understood what airbending was supposed to look like. I feel like sometimes Aang's movements that lead into the airbending are like weird and look bad. And it's I mean this is a nit right here.
I will say the kid is really poorly cast. He's probably like he's a bad actor. I mean, he looks like
Right.
Aang, and he's obviously like talented as a martial artist, but he's incredibly uncomfortable on camera. That is one of the
Yeah.
the worst parts of it. Him and Katara are they're both bad actors. They're both kids.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
and most kids are
Yeah.
bad actors, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I will say that's probably even the dialogue. Like, you know, there's some really talented actors in here. Like I think Dev Patel and Cliff Curtis, who plays Ozai, I think they both do okay. Dev Patel is Zuko. I think they both do okay
I
with
know,
what they're
yeah.
given, right? So like, but yeah,
Right. Which
You could
is also
tell.
why like it makes everything else going on seem even worse in comparison. Like they seem like they're kind of taking it seriously, and everyone else is just like dicking around, right?
I don't get that vibe. I get the vibe of like they're really given bad direction and like they don't know how to deliver these lines in a convincing way. I think
Right,
there's
right,
a
right.
serious like actor like talent dearth in this movie, which sucks. I think if this movie
Right,
had one,
but it's not specifically the actors' talent as well. It's like
it's a
like
bad
the directors. It's the people giving them direction, like trying to.
I'm saying, yeah,
Right.
it's a combination. I think if you have one superstar in this movie, like if Katara was like a famous, really accomplished actress, I think this could be a much better movie. I think if you, I think this, Dev Patel, he's a movie star, but like he doesn't have a lot to do, especially in like the first kind of like chunk before he really, becomes the Blue Spirit or whatever. Like, yeah, I feel like he can't save this movie. Cliff Curtis can't save this movie. So if we had like one really, really good, phenomenal superstar, I think it could really elevate this movie a lot. But in the end, we don't. And so, bad actors, bad direction, bad writing. It's like a trifecta.
Yeah. Bad movie, right?
I don't disagree. I mean, I think this is a bad movie. I just don't think it's like worst movie of all time bad.
I'm not saying it's the worst movie of all time, right?
You
like
said this is
I
the worst
objectively
movie you've
understand.
seen.
It is. It is. But I don't think it's the worst movie of all time. I just haven't seen very many bad movies, right?
Okay, well, I'll
And
make
I can
a list.
acknowledge that. I mean, that's fine. But like, I can acknowledge that, but I can also acknowledge that, like, of the sparse movies that I have seen, I don't know. There's like some bad movies that I've seen, and like there are some that I can watch because like they're so bad. Not that it's good, but that it's like at least enjoyable to watch. There's nothing enjoyable about watching. Again, and I'm going to get into like the fact that it is an adaptation. I have something to compare it to. There's no joy in watching like an adaptation of something that I enjoyed, like a really bad adaptation of something that I enjoyed.
Okay,
right?
so like in the scenes where it's like I had a minor amount of joy a couple times in this movie. Like
Okay.
watching Appa the bison, like watching him float for the first time. That was kind of nice. That was cool. Looked good. Looked fine. Like the CG in this movie is actually pretty good for 2010.
Surprisingly good. Yep.
Yeah.
One of my notes was Appa and Momo look pretty
Yeah,
good.
they look good. Yeah.
I enjoyed them.
Like I think that was pretty good. I think some of the really cool spectacle bending stuff, like that was pretty fun to see translated.
There are 3 scenes where the bending looks good. Yep.
You're referring
There
to
are
my
3
notes.
exact
I
scenes.
see 3 in my index of of scenes.
The problem is that, so I didn't think the earthbending camp scene. Let me get into the earthbending camp scene.
Yeah.
Which is why I didn't enjoy.
You
the
need to
earthbending
go
camp scene.
take a lap, like pet a cat. You sound so pissed off
gotta-
right now.
Archie's meowing in the background, and like it's actually just annoying me, honestly.
Bring Archie on the bike. We need some levity in this. We're 30 minutes in, and your blood pressure is like 200 over 9,000.
No, I'm not like worked up.
You
I'm not
sound
even, like,
worked up.
about it. So
I'm not even mad, bro. Like I'm not mad. Like why are you like?
as I turn into a corn cob, you know what made this movie worse for me? So
Oh God, what?
I was watching
could
this on
possibly-
Freebie or whatever, or like Freebie. Yeah, the free TV app.
It was
right?
free
Or
on
Sling
Amazon
TV.
Prime.
It was not free on Amazon Prime. It was
I
rent
watched
or
it
buy
for
on
free
Amazon Prime.
on Amazon Prime. It was $0 to buy on Amazon Prime. So,
It was $3.99 or $14.99 to own for
well,
me.
I
on
guess
Amazon
you're
Prime.
using the wrong VPN then, because.
Yeah, let me pull it up again just to make sure.
Hey, what I'll say, I did not pay for this movie, and I watched it on Amazon. So.
Last Airbender, rent or buy, rent movie $3.99, buy movie HD $4.99.
Like I said,
I don't know.
Purchased for $0. It offered me the option to purchase, and I was like, "How much is it?" And it said $0, and so I purchased it. So now I own The Last Airbender, which I will say this has 4 stars out of 5 on Amazon Prime. So
I'm sending that to you just so you can like.
I believe you. I'm just saying.
You can see that I'm not crazy. I'm not like.
I don't think you're crazy.
Yeah, it does have 4 stars. IMDb 4 stars. Great.
No,
Crazy.
well, IMDb is saying 4 out of 10, but the 4 stars next.
Oh, it does
on-
have 4.5
It's
on.
yeah,
Prime. You're right.
on Amazon. Anyway.
Oh! I could watch it with a free trial of Paramount Plus if I wanted to.
I didn't
Maybe
have to do
Paramount
that
Plus.
either. This is crazy. Yeah, it says that like last night I was pulling it up on my TV and it was like purchase for $0.00. And I was like, bet I'll own this movie. Fuck it.
You
Swear to
might have,
God.
like Amazon credit or something for that, bro.
Maybe. In which case, that sucks that I spent it on this movie.
Yeah, right? Yeah. See, okay, so can you see how this movie, like, if you went and watched this in theaters, you'd be like, this was a fucking waste of $12, or like however much.
No, I don't think this was a waste.
Wow.
I mean, like, I wouldn't
Wow.
I wouldn't be like thrilled, but I wouldn't be like, this is the worst thing I ever saw. Like, I've definitely seen worse movies than this in theaters that I did not walk out of, or like any, you know what I mean? Like, we should watch like the Exorcist sequel that they did last year, or like, I don't know. There's some like movies from the 60s and 70s that are like, yeah, I don't know. There's just like,
No, I believe you. Yeah, I believe you that there are worse movies that have been like put to screen, and I get that. I mean, fine. I just don't think that and especially some of the movies that you were like citing, like I don't think that they are like like even objectively, I just don't think that they're worse than this one, right?
maybe. I don't know. I like, part of it is also I haven't seen a ton of like this genre of like action adventure fantasy from like this time period. This just wasn't, I mean, action movies in general aren't my jam, but like compared to the ones I have seen, like, I'm not saying this is, you know, John Wick level action or whatever, but like looks fine.
Right.
Looks, it's a
So,
fine
like,
kids movie. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Right, so you
fine.
wanted-
Like, no, like if that's your opinion, fine. So anyway,
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
no, like fine, sure.
the people are getting
I'll
a different
acknowledge
view
that that's
of
an
you.
opinion. Like, no, it's. I mean, sure. Like, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, Lane. And like,
You
my
think that
opinion
this-
is.
Go ahead. No, your opinion is.
No. What I think that this. What?
Well, no, 'cause
Jesus, this is a different side of me. Holy shit! Sorry, go on. What do I think, Lane? You tell me what I
well,
think.
I'm asking you because you say in the past, you've said, do you feel like a movie, you don't like movies or don't dislike movies or hate movies unless you feel like they're a total waste of your time? You really think this was
Yeah.
a complete waste? You didn't get anything out of this? You didn't think about this at
Yeah.
all in a positive way afterward? You didn't remember anything that, like you're saying, like it looked cool at times. Like that indicates to me it was not a
there
total
are-
waste, right?
I'll say maybe it wasn't a total waste. There are 3 things that I think the movie did well. Let's go over the things the movie did well. 40
Okay,
minutes
first,
into the pod.
wait, yeah. Because you did say you were starting to go off about the
What made this
earthbending.
worse? Yeah.
No,
Oh,
well, that too.
all right. So all right. I'll address the 2 things that I've brought up and then have said nothing about since.
Okay.
One, what made this viewing experience worse for me?
Stop
I watched
tapping
it on
the
Sling
microphone.
TV. I'm not. I'm
Yes.
tapping the table.
Stop
Pretty far in
tapping
front of the microphone.
Oh my God.
All right. I talk with my hands. I'll
No
move back
shit.
a little bit because otherwise it's not going to work out.
I
So-
feel like you're in the room with me. Is how fucked like crazy you are right now.
the call was coming from inside the room.
Ricky's about to reach through the laptop and strangle me. Ricky's about
Don't
to
you dare say
airbend
this
me.
movie has any redeeming qualities.
Ricky is airbending the air out of my lungs right now.
All right, I'm not Zahir. Okay, calm down.
All right.
So, great fucking enemy, by the way. And we can get into Legend of Korra later too. What
I've
they
never
did well,
seen
what they
Legend
did
of
poorly.
Korra, like, all the
Okay,
way
that's
through,
fine.
so-
Well, I know you've seen 3 episodes of it, so don't even try
Yeah.
to say like
Okay.
all the way through. Like you got part of the way through it. All right.
Okay.
You dipped your toe.
Is 3 out of whatever 40 not part of the way through? I don't know how many episodes of that show there are.
It's a pittance. If
All right.
if you had watched like most of the first season, I would. If the
Richard, if you don't
main
start talking about
villain of the
earthbending,
first
we're going to
season
be
had-
here until 2 p.m.
All right. Oh yeah, I know. All right, my bad. Okay, so just real quick, watched it on Sling TV free,
Yeah.
for the free Sling TV option. It bumps the runtime up to like 2 hours and something, and it has a bunch of commercial breaks where it's a 3-minute commercial break, and even if they don't have commercials to fill it, it just goes to like the random
same commercial?
elevator fucking music, like dude. So like that
Do you
was
not have an ad
increasing my
blocker?
anger. Not on my TV. I was watching this on my TV. I wasn't going to set anything up with my.
DM me later. I'll tell you how
computer
to
hooked up
set
to
up
it.
an ad blocker on your Wi-Fi. But anyway,
All right, cool.
continue.
Oh yeah. I've actually seen that before.
Yes, incredible. Anyway,
But yeah. Anyway, so the. Although honestly, I think it would probably still play the 3 minutes of the dude whatever it is. The
Yeah, you
fucking
just get
crazy
the
music and shit.
elevator
It would only be that.
hey,
and a lot
the
of
music
times,
in
that's
this
what I was
wasn't that
getting.
bad, right? The music in this was okay.
Every once in a
was
while,
fine.
it's okay. There's a few
Yeah.
times where it's pretty bad. I'll say, and
It's
specifically,
cheesy, but it's not a bad soundtrack.
It's cheesy.
It's like cheesily
Yeah.
deployed.
it is really cheesily deployed. I'd say in pretty much any other movie, I think it'd be fine, but the way it's used here is pretty.
But in
pretty
this
poor.
movie, I fucking hate it.
No, it's just like a lot of times it doesn't really feel fitting. And like maybe again, it could just be that I'm pulling from the source material a bit too much with how I feel about how a certain scene should like look or sound, but that's besides the point. The music on its own is fine. It's okay. It's not the worst. Not great. But yeah, so the ads just like added to my anger because I watched like a fucking shitty montage of them like clearing out firebender like encampments, and then the most like unhinged dialogue ever. Yeah, and then I have like the Bissell vacuum, and then just like 2 minutes of do 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 do, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, let me out, I'm fucking Eric Andreing at the bars. Like it was crazy. Okay, and then
you got bars in your apartment?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Been having bars.
Just like that. Oops. I'll edit that out.
I forget what the second point that I had mentioned, but I wasn't going to bring up.
Well, why don't you refer your fucking 18 pages of notes and we'll get back on track.
Well, because if we do that, then I'm going to go through the movie scene by scene, and it seemed like you didn't want to do that earlier, but we can. Let me say the Earthbender thing.
We can go scene by scene, but do your Earthbender thing first. Fuck.
The pebbles, they throw pebbles, like it's literally they reduce. I feel like they really reduce the power of bending, which I get. Although airbending seems kind of untouched, which is like okay, fine. Waterbending also seems kind of untouched, but they heavily nerfed earth and firebending, which is fine. If I'm not comparing it to the source material, it's okay.
They are kind of OP compared to water and airbending, right? Like, if this. If you took away, like, the plot armor, like, there's no way that fire does not just obliterate air and water. Same with earth. I think earth and fire are the
depending on how it's used. I don't exactly agree with you there, but especially just, like, the way that earthbending in the series especially is used. They use it really creatively, and I think that there's a lot of ways that... Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of ways that it can be just as impactful as the other elements. I can see nerfing them, but maybe not nerfing them to the point that firebenders can't actually firebend without a fire source, right? Like a source of fire nearby. Like, creating fire out of their key was like, oh, like, and they say a couple of times, like, oh my god, like, he's making fire out of nothing.
Yeah, for, right. Iroh, yeah.
For Iroh, which he doesn't use to do anything. He just sort of, like, throws fire around in this... Yeah, he just scares them, and then they just all run away. And that happens a couple of times, actually, where... The bending is just used to essentially scare someone, and then they all run away. In the clearing of the encampment with the earth benders, that's like the first time that they do that.
I do think a cartoon, has a certain levity to it that you can get away with showing violence. You can't do that with a live action movie and keep it PG in the same way, right? Like I don't remember if they show Zuko getting burned. A little bit.
I think they could have added a little bit more weight. So they don't. They're pretty good about it. The way that they like cut away and everything. It's pretty nice, honestly. Like, I think the way that they do it is very tasteful. So it's like essentially like you see Ozai like approaching Zuko, and he's like, "Please, like, I'm not gonna fight you." And then he looks up. I will say the way that they introduced that in this movie is like shoehorned in really poorly, but it's a good explanation of what happened there, right? Like that's a decent exposition dump. Probably the best exposition dump that they have. Is Zuko telling his story to the little kid, having the kid sort of tell the story to him, and him dropping in little things. It also brings up the fact that Zuko saved his friends, which were the ship that he was now currently traveling with, which is a nice little addition. I'm glad that they kept that. I wish that they made it a little bit more explicit that like that was his crew that he was traveling with, and I feel like they could have definitely used that to delve a little bit deeper with the Zuko Zhao rivalry. We're not going to get into that. Or we will get into that, but in a little bit. So the earthbending, the pebbles. All right, fine. It's all pebbles. Real quick, what time do you have to leave?
Like 1 p.m. is my hard stop. So we got lots of time. Yeah.
Well, we have time.
If 90 minutes is not enough time for you to fucking cover the rest of your notes, then go to jail. Like.
All right, fair. So the earthbending, I think so. The fist-sized rock that the one guy throws, that is about what earthbending should have looked like, right? Like the pebbles don't really make sense. It seems like they're making it. It honestly looks like the way that they use like water and like ice bending near the beginning. And I feel like they were very sort of like iffy about how much they want to commit to the differences between how the elements are bent, right? Like And that's the thing. So like we talked before about the martial arts and their connection to the series. It seems as though they didn't use the same form of martial arts for the differences between the bending styles, and they also didn't really sort of transfer over the differences between how the bending is like how bending is used, right, effectively. And I mean, in the original series, it is shown that like benders, you can take sort of ideas from other elements in order to change the way that you're using your element, and that's fine. I really like that addition. I think that's great, but it's not really utilized at all. So like when the Earthbenders are first like throwing rocks around, it looks a lot like it looks like airbending, but like they've picked up some gravel along the way, right? Which is like, okay, fine. I mean, that's the trick that Aang used on the ship before when he was inspiring the Earthbenders. Also, they're Earthbenders, and they're stuck in a camp on a mountain surrounded by Earth. Like, fine, whatever. Okay, they're demoralized. I get that. The return of the Avatar. It didn't really feel like... Like, I get what the movie was going for. Like, oh, this is the first time that the Avatar is being revealed to the world. But it wasn't like... It didn't feel like wholeheartedly triumphant. It didn't feel like they were like there for that shit, right?
I don't know. I guess I'm rewatching this scene now. I feel like they do a pretty good job of distinguishing the airbending from the earthbending. Like as far as the stances that they take, there's a lot more stomping, which I remember. Obviously, is it Toph or Toph?
Toph
in the show. I remember she did a lot of that. So, like, yeah,
right. But the connection between them is what's severed, right? So you see the earth wall come up, and then you see the like 7 or 8 earthbenders all sort of stomping, right? But there's no connection between those two.
No, but the wall is happening. I'm watching this now. The wall comes up because a different guy sent it up. The then guys
what are
who
those
stomping,
guys doing?
Hang on. I'm rewinding.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I was like,
so I
all
can
right.
just watch it any time.
Yeah. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I was like, oh, all right. So like, they essentially made it so it's like a shamanic ritual which creates this, right? Shyamalanic ritual which creates an effect.
Good joke.
Thanks.
Okay, so all right, I'll cut this down.
You see the guy throw the rock.
Hang on. I'm getting there. I'm watching the whole thing. Okay, they're stomping. Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see what you mean, where the stomping happens after. But I guess it's like finishing it more than,
It's just a misunderstanding of, like, so if, again, it's like, if they had shown them stomping and then, like, the wall being raised up or something like that, I'd be a little more like, fine, whatever.
I feel like instead it's supposed to be them finishing the move. Like, there's the implication is that they've been stomping. Like, right? Like,
Right. But, right. And again, it's just, like, if we could see the direct impact. So, like, that's why, like, I was more okay with, like, when the guy threw the rock, right? It's like, okay, right. He's just raising his fist and throwing the rock. That makes sense. I'm fine with that, right? If they had shown like the connection between like the wall and the benders, I'd be a little bit more fine with it. Like maybe a more wide shot where they have them stomping and like maybe a bit of movement in the wall, like it pushes the firebenders back at all.
The pickiest like that of all time. Like,
no, it's
because like every other move that they're doing, like that is the one time that you see a move happen after the effect. Every other time, like the Fire Nation does something or Aang does something, like they're all very clearly related. It's just that one stomping.
Right. So in this scene as well, when Aang is like charging up his air, right? He has to like so he spins it around a few times, but the like air effect. So again, like it's going to seem like a lot of these are going to seem like nits, but it's just in the way that like they're cutting away at the fluidity of a lot of these movements, right? And they're like over-explaining it almost, right? But they have to like over-explain that, like, oh, like you see all these earthbenders moving, they're all moving like this because they can make the earth move. Also,
well, but that's what you want. You said you wanted to feel the connection, and I feel
want
like
there to be
like...
a connection. So I want that to be shown on screen. I don't want it to be like, again, it's literally they're telling, not showing, but they're telling you through the characters' movements instead of showing
Ricky, that is literally
the connection
showing.
between them.
I think you misunderstand.
But they're disconnected. They're disconnected.
Means.
Like look at look at the shot and tell me they're not disconnected.
I'm watching Aang do the air thing right now, and yes, is it super over the top the way that he does his like hand jutsu?
He just has to like hand jutsu once and then throw it, right?
Sure, but
it's like the big thing.
That's not as
or
cool
like
to
they could have
see
made
in
a
live
little
action.
tornado effect.
That's
right,
not
but
as cool
if they
to
had
see.
Yeah, if they had
Like,
made like a little tornado effect going into his arms, I would have been like more okay with that too, right?
they're obviously
Like,
trying to give us a lot more to look at there because, again, a cartoon can be more simple and still engaging because they can exaggerate more. This is just exaggerating in live action.
right. Oh,
Like that.
okay,
It's
but
just
what
looks
would they have
different.
exaggerated more within the cartoon there?
The movements, the movements could be bigger. They could look like they could be like more stretched
More expansive,
out.
I guess.
There could
I could
be,
see that. But
yeah,
Aang
yeah.
has used that literal like exact same move. And I'll say that the airbending that he does on the ship is the first move that he throws is good. The way that he runs up on the side of the ship is okay. When he's like running past the three firebenders, it's okay, not great, okay. And he like knocks one of them over. With
See, I thought
airbending
that
as
was
well.
kind of cool. Like I thought that was fun and funny to see him do that.
It was kind of cool. That was like pretty good, and it was like our first introduction to airbending. Not bad. I'd say that they did like pretty okay with that scene. Like just for that earthbending scene, they needed to have the earth moving on screen with the earthbenders who were moving, right?
It's that one shot. You're talking about one shot in like a 3-minute scene. It's
Right, but it's like the most impactful shot. It's the most impactful use of earthbending that we see. The
I don't
airbending
know if
again.
that's true.
I think that they had a better hold on like airbending than they did on the other elements, and like that's fine, right? Like the airbending Aang does like generally looks pretty okay, even if it's not like exactly to my taste. It's pretty decent, you know. It's there. All right, let's start this shit up from the beginning, okay?
Oh my god. Okay.
So the first 20 minutes should have been like formatted differently. The way that they do the intro scene and then later have Katara's grandmother like exposition
Give
dump
the-
them. Right, give the Avatar yada yada save the world, and they're reacting to it as though they heard it for the first time. And then later in the movie, Katara is like talking to Aang, like she's like, "Oh, like I've heard stories about this from my grandmother, like all growing up, all throughout my life, that the Avatar would be back, yada yada." It's like, all right,
Oh,
but
I
you were
don't-
just acting like this was a surprise earlier.
It sounds more like they've been hearing about the Avatar, but they haven't heard about the grandmother's like distinct connection and like her encouraging them to go with him with the Avatar. I don't think I don't get the sense of like I don't get the sense that this is the first time they're hearing it in that scene. I think it's more like, oh, my grandma was like related to all this shit. Like that's more what they're getting at there.
All right, fine. I mean, it definitely to me it seemed like I the way that I feel like they should have introduced it is like started it with grandma giving a story over like a campfire to like the entire water tribe, right? And then cut it into a scene of Katara messing with waterbending near Sokka, right?
But
And that's where they should have played up the waterbending where she accidentally freezes him for laughs, right? Instead of doing that right before they're taken to the earthbending compound.
Well-
And I get
well,
that
they
it was
need
an
a
easy
reason to
way
get-
for them to...
Yeah,
they
get
needed a reason
kidnapped.
for them to get caught. I get that, right? I understand it. I think one thing that the show does well and that they should have brought over here is that the Fire
Wait,
Nation
only-
love to use nets.
Only one thing the show does well?
Yeah, right.
I thought you loved
I know.
the show.
Haha. Ha 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 ha.
But so
I don't know.
I don't disagree with you. The narration,
Yeah.
like in the beginning, like all of the narration is pretty bad. You know, she doesn't
Right.
sell it very well. In the beginning, it's a little strange that they do change the opening crawl, but they keep the like the intro of like the people all showing off the different styles of bending. But then they have the opening like crawl where they're like, you know, 100 years ago, everyone lived in harmony, but then he vanished. But they change it, and it's strange because they don't add anything extra to it. They just kind of like change the way it's worded and make it more
Yeah.
flowery. It's a weird choice to like, and it's kind of like a drag, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's strange. So I agree with you about the like some of the exposition could have been handled more delicately instead of
Yeah.
like in the
Aang's first interaction with firebenders as well, I feel like he definitely should have been more like, oh, like I know people in the Fire Nation, like this is fine, yada yada. Whatever. I mean, they didn't want to get into that. That's okay. It's sort of like a weird thing to cut.
That's true, yeah, because at that point when he's captured, he doesn't understand everything
Right.
like going on.
Right.
He thinks it's still 100 years ago. Yeah.
Because they didn't see the ship in the ice.
Yeah. I
Which
do
I
feel
don't
like
think they had
that's
to, but
yeah. I feel like that
I
part of
think
that
that's a
is
fine cut.
the kid. I feel like a better actor could have delivered it a little bit more like
I don't think there was
Yeah,
much
had
to deliver
better-
there.
well,
Right.
better new. Oh, yeah, there is. Like when he's reacting to the test and he's like whatever. Is it?
Oh yeah,
Iroh?
Aang is a magnet.
Sets all the.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, which I thought was a cool way of, demonstrating their little test of him being the Avatar. But like, yeah, the kid, like, his reactions are very like, he's way more scared than you think he should be. Given the nuance of all the things you just said, of like how he doesn't know where he is, or he shouldn't.
I mean, by that point, Zuko had already threatened to burn down the Water Nation village.
So wait, are you defending
I think at that
this
point
now?
it's fine. No, I'm saying that particular point is like fine, right? I mean, that's like some of the like redeemable parts of this movie. Like I think that's okay. Like as an adaptation or like just like without it, right? Like that scene I didn't really have a problem with. It's fine.
I thought you okay.
What?
Well, you were just saying that it's weird that he's reacting this way and he's not like, oh, the firebenders.
I mean,
like,
at the very
be
beginning, when they're walking into the village and they're like, oh, like hide. Why was Aang just like, oh, okay, I'm hiding? And then like when a soldier comes up to him and like takes down his like hood, sees that he's an airbender, like the entire time Aang is just like, oh, okay. And then he's like, oh, like I'm gonna burn this village down if you don't come with me. And Aang's like, I'm coming with you. It's
well, yeah,
like,
sure. He's a good person, right? And he knows he's the
right,
Avatar, so he doesn't want to upset anyone.
He's also just like, oh yeah, okay, sure, why not? Like, but it feels like he doesn't feel any threat there. And then like once like they're on the ship and Zuko's explicitly like, you're my prisoner, like I'm gonna take you into the Fire Nation, you're my captive now. That's when he's like, oh wait a second, like now I feel threatened. It's like, okay, cool, but also like, I don't know. The time for panic has shifted. Like there was a time that you should have been like a little like wary. In the very beginning, when Sokka mentions the Fire Nation, their machines, he has a very particular way that I'm going through my notes set, by the way.
I could tell
1 hour in.
When the actor who plays Sokka, when he delivers, his delivery is like really bad.
Yeah, he also doesn't have very many lines, which is like kind of a blessing, but also.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that he's, like, not cracking jokes is a strange choice. Because if there were ever going to be any levity in this movie, which I think there needs to be, I think their approach of, like, the source material is just too silly to have if you have kids involved.
Right.
Like, there's
especially in that
really...
first season. Like, it's...
Yeah.
That's, like, very sort of, like, no...
gravity...
Yeah, no gravity. It's supposed to be very sort of light. Like there's no real consequences to a lot of their actions, and like you don't really start to see that until later. And I get that they were going for a more serious take on it, especially with like in the last scene where they're like, oh, like the Avatar's back, yada yada.
Yeah. But like
it doesn't
in the
seem
beginning,
like they know how to play that well for tension, right?
Right. I do think it's hard to have a movie be serious and a fantasy action movie and star a kid. Like, I think that those are just, you can't do all three. Like, there's nothing that's, like, less believable in this movie. Or like, this movie is about as believable, like, lore-wise, I guess, or, like, the world is as believable as, like, Lord of the Rings, right?
Right.
And Lord of the Rings strikes a good balance of...
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
I made a note about Lord of the Rings in here, but go on. It strikes a good balance.
Yeah, I just, that movie, it doesn't star a kid, but they're able to be serious. There's moments of jokes or levity in that, but like, and wonder that this movie fails to make, even though those movies, obviously those are like incredible movies, but like, I think having a young cast like this that is so seemingly inexperienced and like uncomfortable on the camera means that they can't strike that tonal balance either, and the writing doesn't help them at all, and so it does have this like very it's the tone
and
is
a lot
very
of that comes down to
consistent.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. I mean, those movies, the Lord of the Rings movies, took like 4 years to make, right? Like those are those are huge movies. I'm sure this was made in like 90 days. But yeah, the actor who plays Sokka is like, you want him to crack jokes, and instead he is playing like a heartthrob, which this actor is like, he's from the Twilight movies. I don't think he's ever been in anything else. So it's like, that's all he knows, I think.
Honestly, I'm kind of okay with that too. As long as, I don't know, Sokka's character is like okay. He's just not really used at all. Like Katara is used a lot for exposition, which I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah. Well, she's supposed to be like the normal-ish person that we relate to. just like she is
Right.
in the TV show, I think. But yeah, they,
Yeah,
again, the they don't do her justice. And yeah, Sokka kind of is incidental to everything. He's not really super important to the story in this.
Yeah.
And he's not there for comedy, so it's like, get this clown out of here. Like, we don't need
Right.
him.
So like the few times that they do kind of try to play for laughs, it really falls flat, at least to me, right?
Yeah, like when he's frozen in the ice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's one other scene where they try to go for a laugh, and I feel like it was Sokka too, but it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
I don't know about if it was Sokka. I guess the with Appa when they first see him floating or flying. Like
With the kids on the village, all on his feet.
Yeah, which was kind of cute, but then the joke they made was very like, not funny.
It's not funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which happens. That's fine. So one of my main notes here is I wrote, it's like somebody was told about the show for a couple hours, then made this movie. What is this dialogue, man?
Yeah, the dialogue is bad, but okay. And here's where, have you seen any other Shyamalan movies? Like, have you seen like The Happening, which is a worse movie than this one, or like?
I haven't seen The Happening. I saw Signs.
Okay, Signs is good, but like Signs has this
I like
too.
Signs.
It's the way he directs people when they talk. In a lot of his movies, they have bad delivery, and they're like, he writes a lot of the movies too, and he wrote this one, and his dialogue is just kind of awkward, and like I think that's just his style, and it works in certain, like in The Sixth Sense or in Signs, it kind of works, like, and you have very talented like cast in that, whereas if
the
you have
Sixth
something
Sense
like,
also, at least for me, kind of worked because like it adds to the whole like
otherworldliness of it,
right, like the twist at the end, it's
mystery.
like, oh, okay, like that's why this was so weird, right?
Wait, there's a twist
right
at the end of The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, haha, teehee. But like tell me, like
Lighten
I think it
up,
works a little
man.
bit better.
Oh my god.
I did mean that in like a teehee
You sound
way.
fucking
Sorry.
roided up right now.
I'm not even like mad. I mean, my throat's a little sore, I guess. I don't know.
From yelling, yeah. I believe it.
All right.
All right,
I
but,
did
like,
write. I just don't think that the show should have been adapted to a movie because there's not enough time to build
I would
plot.
agree
There's
with
not
you
enough time
there.
to focus on characters. And they get sort of like frantic to try to build up a bunch of these relations, which they just didn't have to.
Yeah, I don't think this is a movie-like story, to
Right.
begin with. So I kind of agree with you there. I do think that if they had put the world and had a different story, or like had a more different take, or like a vastly different take within this world, I think that could have been better.
I think people would have been a lot more accepting of it as well. Like
Probably,
of them like
yeah.
taking certain liberties, they would have been like, all right, well, fine, whatever.
I think, yeah. I will say, I feel like there was too much stacked against this movie from the beginning. I don't think anybody would have received it well at the time. Like, I really don't
for
think...
sure.
Even if this movie was, like 20% better, I still think people would be like, this movie's ass, dookie from a butt. But
So, I think that the ways in which they could have made it... I think they could have made this 20% better in very specific ways. I think Zhao's characterization should have been a lot more impulsive, a lot more prone to anger, whereas in the movie he seems sort of like almost like the skeeving,
he's like a cartoon
plotting
villain.
guy.
Yeah, he's like
right.
Which I accepted that, I guess, because I know that he's like supposed to be more aggressive in the cartoon. I don't know. When I saw who Iroh was supposed to be, like, and how like very different they went with him. Like he is like wildly different in the show.
Yeah.
Like down to the stylizing or style of the character. I was more accepting of the changes they made to the characters in that regard. Like the like who the characters were, even though I don't think they're all successful choices. Like, again, they're making Sokka and Iroh, who are the two kind of comic relief characters, at least in the beginning. They're making them more serious because the movie's more serious. So it was,
Right.
I kind of accepted that Zhao was a little bit, but it is funny because Asif Manvi, the actor who plays Zhao, is like, he was on the fucking Daily Show. Like, he's a comedian, you know. It's
Right.
so it's funny that they made him like a mustache twirling kids villain when he's, you know, like I don't know. He could have leaned into it more, I think, and like you said, like been bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they could have done that in like small ways. Part of the reason why I had a problem with him visiting Ozai so often and having those conversations, I think that should have just been done through letters and, like, just having the visual of him like crumpling a letter, throwing it into the fire, or like in anger, like doing a little like fire, not explosion, but like just a quick like burst of flames out of his hands or something, and watching that burn up. I mean, it just would have been A, far more interesting, and B, added a little bit more to his characterization and made more sense in terms of like how they're moving throughout the world. Right.
Maybe, yeah. I guess the reason for it probably is that they wanted to have more screen time with Ozai because he's the big bad. And because, again, if you think of this as like
but
a
that's
movie...
not established in the movie, right? It's not like fully established. I mean, they mentioned the Fire Nation.
I feel like it's pretty well established because they're like... that they show that he burned the fuck out of his kid. They show that he's the leader, you know. I feel like even though like he's not the villain of season 1, right? And he's not the villain of this movie, but he's like the bigger bad, right?
Right.
So
even throughout season 1, they're very sparing with how they show him specifically because he's not the big bad of season 1, right?
Right.
And I'd say even in a lot of ways, the antagonist of the first season was Xiao.
Oh, for sure. He absolutely is. But this movie...
Well, I mean, with Zuko, it's kind of flip-flops, but I feel like the movie could have leaned into that a little bit better.
I feel like if this movie had sequels, it would be better. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like if this movie, like...
It might make more sense, yeah.
Finish the trilogy, it would feel more... Yeah, cohesive or, you know, less scattered because they would... If they had guaranteed that they had multiple... It would make more sense as an arc. Because, right, if you watched season 1, and again, if you watch season 1, like, on its own, you'd be like, well, who's this Ozai guy that they keep talking about? Like, he's just in the background. Like, I guess we'll never know where he goes, or, like, we'll never get payoff there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like...
Right.
Yeah.
See, but I think they do very well with teasing him. Like, they don't even show his face. He's just like a shadowed figure.
Right, in the TV show. Yeah.
Right. And, I mean, even just with the way that the TV show culminates at the season finale, it feels a lot, like... cleaner almost than what they do in the movie, which is like fine.
Yeah, because they don't build up to show him in the movie. I'll give you that. Yeah, but they can't. Right? This is for a broader audience.
No, I understand.
You know, this isn't so like I understand why they did it, even though it's less effective or maybe not the best choice. You know, you have to think they were shooting like birdshot, right? Like they were like, we got to hit. Like, we got to really entice people in here. And so, like, you know, we'll cast a famous actor to play the big bad, and, like, he'll draw people in over time. And, like, you know, over time we'll show more of him. But they got to show him in the beginning, too, to show that there's something else. There's a reason for a sequel, right?
Right.
I agree with you. I think ultimately this should not have been a movie, or at least they shouldn't have, taken it in the direction they did.
I think it would have been fine showing him just 3 times. One at the end with Azula, where like they're obviously hooking for a sequel. One probably earlier. I would have had it actually much earlier, where Zhao first goads Zuko. A, I would have had them call an Agni Kai, and B, I would have that happen immediately after they show Ozai burning Zuko in a flashback via an Agni Kai. And I feel like they could have actually revealed that through Iroh talking to Zuko's crew, and they could have pulled in the reveal that, oh hey, Zuko actually had, very much so in the same way that they did it in the show, where Iroh and the crew are bonding, and he sort of, we don't learn it at that time, but we do learn later that Zuko had saved this crew from what was essentially a suicide mission.
Right.
It would have been a lot nicer if they had sort of like blended some of those scenes together, and you really could have compacted that and put that right near the beginning. You could have intensified that sort of Zhao and Zuko rivalry. Again, I think they sort of needed the pirates as a plot point, and shifting the Water Scroll into the Kyoshi Island records, and the accident that Zuko was in into an off-screen fatality are both kind of like weak, right? And it's
You mean where they set him up to be killed, but he doesn't die? Is that what you mean?
who Zuko?
Zuko?
Well, the
Yeah.
pirates. Yeah, the pirates bomb his ship, right, in the
Right.
cartoon.
Right.
And it's assumed that he dies, and it's
Right,
sort
but
of like
that's-
Zhao's way of like, haha.
They do that in the movie too.
Did I miss that?
Yeah,
I
he
didn't,
blows
I didn't
up the
even
ship.
see the ship exploding.
Yeah. Oh. Hey, for how much you wrote about this movie, to forget a whole scene like that, my God. Yeah, he blows it up, and then, he kind of goes into hiding. That's when that's right after the Blue Spirit thing. It's like
Right.
he comes back, and Iroh's like, "I told him you were with a girl. They
We were
searched
on
the ship."
vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he goes and he escapes though. Yeah, so it's not they don't show
What
the
happened?
pirates, but they
it
do.
happens. It happens right there. The ship explodes right after that scene.
Literally, yeah, like he walks into the ship to like bitch about, he's like a brooding kid, right? And then he
Yeah.
right after that conversation, and then the ship explodes. He notices that the steam is coming out of the pipe, and then he like runs away. But
Yeah,
he
I-
pretends
I
he's
don't know.
dead. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I missed that minute or two.
You were
but,
blind with rage. Yeah.
I was. I honestly, I think what it was is I would mute during the commercials and then like walk around, and so like I think I just missed that because I was right by a commercial break. I do know what you're talking
Maybe.
about.
Yeah.
I mean that's fine. Like, so it wasn't off screen, but at the same time, it's not my favorite use of it. I just like the way that the pirates added the chase factor to Team Avatar, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like
There's just no time for any of that. It sucks.
there would have been time if they had like cut and sort of moved.
If I
shit
wrote
around
this
a little
movie,
bit. Yeah,
let the fans write the movies.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it would have been better if there was somebody who was an avid fan who had like participated in the writing of the movie.
Maybe. I'm very skeptical of that kind of thing.
Okay,
That's
fair.
how you end up with people being like, it's just like, I don't know, that kind of like fans, higher fans thing is, I'm sure you see it with video games a lot too. I know you're more plugged in than I am to like Twitter and stuff, so you see that kind of like, yeah, comments from like, oh, these game developers don't know it like I do.
I mean, a lot of the games that I play, especially competitive games, like the balanced teams do, like they're in pretty close communication with like the pro players.
Sure. I guess
and,
I'm
like,
thinking
they
more
tend to
of
balance
like
around that.
the big AAA games. Like when people talk
Yeah,
about like
I don't
The
really
Last
play
of
those,
Us or
like COD,
Yeah.
The Last of Us. Yeah, I don't really play those games. Is the problem? I guess I'm a bigger fan of like
I
the
feel like-
smaller releases.
oh, me too, but like the responses to those games can be ubiquitous. Like it's everywhere, unfortunately, because they're so big. Anyway,
And I feel like a lot of
Okay.
the people who work on these games definitely like they're passion projects. I mean,
Oh, for
to
sure,
a certain degree,
yeah.
like you have to really enjoy the medium and like this specific game in order to get into working on it, right? Hopefully.
for sure. No, I agree with you, but there's a difference between someone, with skills and talent being like, and like storytelling experience or, experience working on like a project like that, who is also passionate about the source material or about the genre or whatever. And then, idiots who've never like made, eye contact with somebody in the last 3 weeks, like who are like higher fans.
Fair.
That's a different, two different kinds of people. Okay, I have a broader question for you,
Yeah.
and don't get defensive about this either.
Okay.
So, we've established the race changes in the casting of this movie are bad. I think those are like the cast of this movie is the worst part of it.
You're right.
But is the TV show like any better? Don't get me wrong, the show is diverse, and I think it's an interesting world, and the characters are like complex and not like racial stereotypes or anything, but the cultures kind of are. I don't know, like reading about the show for the first time and learning that not only is it like not inspired, but it was an original idea,
Yep.
but then
Ernie
also,
Huss.
yes, I remember you mentioning his name last time, but like written by three white guys, and it's kind of just like we really liked Asian culture and like martial arts and Hong Kong cinema, and so we blended all of those together and made this. I don't think anything in this show is probably like extremely offensive. I'm not, I don't want to say that. Like, I don't think this is like a poorly drawn, whatever mishmash of cultures and whatever. But I do think the premise is a little strange. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think any interpretation on other cultures, as long as it's handled with care. I mean, bringing to mind Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which is like not sort of lauded, but generally seen as a Western take on Eastern philosophy. I think as long as you take care with how you're displaying these sort of like notions, these ideologies, and like the cultures that they come from, right? Because like obviously like he's borrowing a lot from a lot of different cultures and like a lot of different stories. And I mean it's said that like good artists steal, great artists, or no, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Like there is some stuff that's just like straight up lifted, and I think it's I kind of think that they do it well, right? Like it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm not coming into this with a hard opinion either way. I would want to read more about people's takes on it. It just, as like I think this show is probably one of the most, I mean, it's anime inspired, right? Like obviously,
right.
It's probably one of the most popular anime / cartoons in that style. Like I think this is way more accessible, right? Than like, because it was on Nickelodeon, like way more accessible to kids during this time than like Naruto or even Dragon Ball or Sailor Moon. So it's like
right than any of the traditional anime, which would be airing on like Toonami or something at 3 a.m.
Right. So it's just I don't know. I wonder if the original show is like as immune from some of the racial kind of questions that this movie brings up by translating the actors to white character or translating the characters into white actors. It just kind of, I don't know, because all of the cast, the voice cast of the original show is white, or like most of them, like Aang,
I mean,
Katara, Sokka.
So you sort of get into the like, when you get into voice actors, right? It becomes the like, oh well, like should a white guy really voice Apu? And like that's an offensive it's offensive in some ways as a racial stereotype, right?
Right.
I mean, and it's not like he's not a fully
character's
fleshed out
pretty
character.
racist in that case too.
Right.
Yeah, but
right. The character is pretty racist in that distinctly, and like he is a fleshed out character, and like he has things outside of his race that are like interesting about him. I like Apu. I think he's cool.
Right.
But then it gets into like, well, like this guy did his voice for 16 years, and he's a white guy. Like, isn't that kind of racist? And it's like, yeah, when he's doing the like, thank you, come again. Like, yeah, that's racist, right? Like, straight up. That's not really a joke that like a white guy should be making. Does that come down to maybe like the voice actors at the time, the budget that they were working with, like these sorts of things?
I feel like instead it was more like they thought it was funny that this guy could do this accent and write this character. I mean, right?
Well, at least for that, right? I'd say that like yeah, maybe they were just like going through the different voice actors things, but like that guy voices like 40 people in the town, right? It's like all right, well, like I'm not gonna get up in arms. But it's like, well, if the majority of his cast that he's voicing is like white or like yellow, as every character in The Simpsons is, except for like, except for characters that have like an actual race. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole separate conversation. But I hear what you're saying, like
just milquetoast like, white.
Right, but that I agree with you. Like these characters aren't necessarily like racial stereotypes, or at least not like negative ones, but it still is like, okay, you're writing this like mystical story and it's East Asia inspired in most cases, and like there's a lot going on with like Imperial Japan. It's just
colonialism, or like it's a big touch on that.
It's just, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's interesting that this show kind of gets no flack for that, but then the movie does. Because I think it makes it more explicit.
Right, because it is live action versus having voice actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to read some Asian or like South Asian criticism of the show. Not like lower C criticism, not like negative, but just like critiques.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Like takes because it's something that I think is brought to the surface by the movie that. Yeah,
right. I think that's something that they've done pretty well in the new live action adaptation on Netflix, right?
Yeah, I've seen
they have a diverse cast and like
yeah,
the cast looks great, and I think they really fit their roles.
They fucking found Sokka. Like that kid looks just fucking Sokka. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the costuming. This is another thing that this movie does well. The costuming in this movie is pretty good. It's a change that they made from the original, which I enjoyed. Right.
Yeah.
It makes it work a lot better in live action, and like it doesn't look like a cosplay, right? It looks like
the costumes look good.
Right. It's like, oh, this is what like a monk would look like. This is what like a random soldier would look like, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all cohesive and it makes sense.
They do look like real and like actual clothes, which a lot of like, especially now, a lot of stuff doesn't look like that at all. Like the costuming has, especially in big action stuff, looks like garbage.
So that's something that I'm not big on with the new Netflix live action is that
it's a little too faithful. Yeah.
A little too faithful. Yeah. Yeah. Where I mean, I'm not saying that like, oh, like this just looks like a stupid cosplay of the cartoon, right?
Right.
But it's like really pushing that line. Like I would have liked to see the waterbenders in like either like a coarser sort of material for like the big winter coats, or like actually using like animal pelts or skins, right? And they don't have to be real, right? Like I'm not saying that I'm endorsing animal cruelty, but I would have liked them to try to stay in that same vein of like put them in some leather or whatever. And then I haven't seen a ton of the new live action. I think the firebending outfits look fine. I didn't really have a problem with that, but like Aang's outfit is like, it's like a 1-to-1 recreation.
It's a little goofy looking. Yeah,
it's a little goofy looking. Yeah, like in the show, that's fine, especially because like you have a lot more play. It's a cartoon.
Yeah.
But like Aang's in the movie, I was like, all right, that kid's a monk. Like immediately, you see him coming out of that iceberg, you're like, what's this little monk doing out here? You know, little bald head ass monk. Like, what's going on? So like, and again, it's not like I'm saying that the movie did like everything wrong, right? But it's of the movies that I've seen, it's like probably one of the worst, if not the worst, right? And
that's fair. I mean, I get it.
Part of that also comes down to the action scenes. Like there's 3 action scenes that I really found enjoyable. Aang and the Blue Spirit fighting in the one firebender encampment within the abandoned air temple. Pretty good. The slow-mo that they use there, and like that's the thing, the slow-mo that they use in the movie when you can actually like sort of focus on
cool.
the movement, it's good. Those are well choreographed scenes. They did well there, and like, I mean, I can appreciate that. That's nice. They did a good job.
Yeah.
It does sort of underline the nerfs that have been made to firebending though, in a lot of those scenes, and it also doesn't really translate well or make sense in that regard when you're looking at like, oh, the Fire Nations are invading the Water Tribe, and the Water Tribe just has these like big like pots filled with fire to like, you know, like warm and lighten area, and it's just like, it's like, ooh man, the Fire Nation's attacking, like I guess we got to get prepared, but leave those pots out. We want to be able to see them as they're walking in. You know, we got to have eyes on them at all times. And it's like,
they mentioned that they have to put those out. I think part of it is that they were taken by surprise, right?
Yeah, and again, the timing of the movie doesn't it's not really cohesive, and it doesn't really make sense. Like the in-universe timing doesn't really make sense. The way that, because like obviously there's time that like Aang has to train, which a lot of that sort of gets off-screened. We see them do, like, the one spar session.
Yeah, right.
Which is fine. Earlier in the series, where Katara and Aang are training together, we don't actually get to see them bending any water. They just go through the movements, and then when Aang is practicing by himself later, he's actually water bending. It's a nit, but, like,
I feel like that
really-
kind of makes sense because like you would practice the movements before you practice doing like the serious thing, right?
Yeah,
and she
but the-
kind of coaches him on the movements.
Right, right. But they're practicing right in front of the water, and like they do it in the show where like you get to see like what goes wrong if you bend
It's-
wrong. And I mean, even when they played it up for laughs earlier, when Katara freezes Sokka, it's like okay, like
Though
it means that they're
The
not
fact that-
afraid to show them bending, but like at the same time, it seems like they are afraid to show them bending sometimes.
you can't remember the names and character names of some of the movies that we've seen as we're talking about them, but this you are picking up like minutia and analyzing it in a way that you have never has been seen by Ricky before. Like it's crazy, man. If you had this amount of like attention to detail for every movie we watched, this would be a very serious podcast.
Yeah, it's because I enjoyed the source material a lot, right? For a lot of the movies that we watch, it's
Bring that energy to the other shit, man. Come on.
for a lot of these other movies, they're either like, and especially because it's like my first time watching it, right? When I watch this movie, I'm looking for certain things because there are things that I want them to do right from the original, right? And like I have a very clear idea in my mind's eye of like, oh, like this is what blank should look like. This is what earthbending should look like. This is what waterbending should look like. And I can kind of understand why they changed certain things. And like when they make like waterbending a lot more angular, it's like fine, that's okay. It's a maybe a necessary change. When they make firebending like based off of fires that are already present, it's like okay, fine. I can see that being like a sort of necessary change in order to like not have them just be exploding fire all over the screen all of the time, right? Like it's fine. I'm taking them with a grain of salt.
I'm just saying, you're not beating the film bro accusations here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, and again, I think like a lot of my gripes do come down to like comparisons to the original series, right? And I'm not going to say that they don't. But when you have, in my mind, what is like really good source material, and then you sort of go against that in order to like once you bring that onto the cutting floor in order to make a movie out of it, there's like very distinct things that you should cut in order to get down to the time limit, and then there's a lot of things that like maybe you shouldn't be showing when you like want to get down to this time limit, right? Ozai is a prime example. Like there's no time reason why he's not shown in the first season, right? It's a building anticipation thing. And if they really did actually intend for this movie to have sequels, then like there's not really a ton of reason for him to be shown in the first movie outside of like near the very end or a few key scenes or in like flashbacks, right? At least in my mind. So
I'm seeing here that M. Night Shyamalan personally slit your throat in your sleep.
Is that
true?
too aggressive? Was that too aggressive for me to say? I don't know. Like I don't feel like I'm like
I just, in general, it's like, I don't know, meet the movie on its terms. Instead of trying to, like, be mad about the fact that it's not the movie you want it to be or, like, the movie that you think it should be. Like, again, I'm not saying that, like, if you came to this movie with an open mind, you would see it's secretly a 5-star masterpiece. But, like, you know, you came to it, obviously, with, like, a really aggressive hatred and,
Right.
like, analysis that you haven't had on any of our previous movies. So,
Right.
just, like,
I mean,
I don't know, like...
I did that with Aragon as well in the past, which like we haven't done on this show. I did that with Harry Potter as well, but it's like
Well, those are really like faithful adaptations, so of course you're going to come away.
well, Harry Potter
a
is
little
very
bit
faithful
heavier.
adaptation. So
That's what I mean.
Let's not
Yeah,
touch on Aragon.
the Harry Potter movies are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
So-
Aragon is okay, like as a low budget film. Like fine, sure, you did what you could. Whatever.
I don't know how low budget that movie is. I'd
Wow.
be curious to know.
It felt low budget. Sorry.
No, I feel. Let's see. That movie had almost. I mean, it was 2/3 the budget of this movie, so like not that much smaller.
80% of that went towards the CGI on the dragons, which is like okay, cool.
Is there anything else in that movie? Like, isn't the whole thing about dragons?
I mean,
That kind of makes sense to me.
no, I mean, I think they should have focused more on the. So, like, they put a lot of emphasis on the end of the book when they get to the Vanguard or whatever.
I know
forget what the
nothing
name of
about
the
Aragon,
organization
so,
is.
yeah.
Okay, they get to the secret organization who's going to hold them who's like going to help protect Aragon from the Empire, yada yada. I don't know. There's a lot of. I really enjoyed that book, that whole book series. I thought was pretty good, and like it came out at like just a good time in my life, I guess, for reading it. I was like the same age as the author, Christopher Paolini. So I guess like my ideas were sort of at the same level as his. So reading it was sort of like very cohesive.
Yeah, right. He was like a kid, right, when he wrote it, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
I think maybe he was like a couple years older, but than like I was at the time of reading it. So it was like really cool. I mean his parents owned the publishing house that it went to, so it's like all right, like makes sense, I guess. But yeah, it's the movie, while not being a faithful adaptation, and while I had a couple problems with how they depict some of the earlier scenes, I feel like they did okay for like the second half, right? Maybe I am being too harsh to Avatar, right? I'm doing the Thanos thing right now. They're like, maybe I was too harsh to you.
I can understand, wanting to like be protective of a thing that means a lot to you. Like, I get it.
Right.
But I feel like that, just it can lead to so much disappointment. And
yeah. So I mean, that's the same reason why I never watched the Shannara series, because like I have a lot of fear that it's not going to live up to the book. And like I love the sort of Shannara. I love the entire Shannara series. I love the world that it takes place in. And I'm not quite sure that they'll be able to match that. And I mean, that's a lot of my trepidation about live action adaptations, or even cartoon adaptations of like something that I've read previously. And especially with like the amount of like manga that I read and then watch turned into anime, it's like I'm naturally going to compare the two, right?
Again, a comparison is natural. And even like if you're like the take that they had is bad, like I think that's fair. Like,
I think that the take that they had in this movie was bad in a lot of regards, and I have like very specific things that I can point to about it, right? And I think that the inclusions that they make really detract from the movie, and like the vibe that they have going for. I think the vibe that they were going for is also sort of a detractor. I also like I get that Aang had to be captured in the Northern Air Temple, right, when he's visiting that. I don't think that they should have had him visit the Northern Air Temple at all, really. I think having them being captured in their sleep and Zuko breaking Aang out would have been perfectly fine. They also could have brought the Earthbenders in there, the Earthbender encampment there, if they wanted to. I don't know. It's like
Man, you sound defeated. You sound like you've been going 10 rounds.
Yeah, because I'm not trying to like rail too aggressively against it, right? I'm trying to be a little bit more metered, keep it in check, right, and point to specific exampments of what I do and do not like, right? But a lot of it comes down to...
Now you sound like you're campaigning for president.
My bad. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to
good.
speak about this in like a normal way. I guess I'm having a normal one right now.
I can tell. It's okay. We love you, man. It's good. It's all good. I would say you mentioned when you said his name, when you said Aang, it reminded me, just kind of coming back to the like race stuff or cultural stuff, right? They changed the names, which a lot of people like hate. Yeah. But like, and I get that again, it's just like, it's not faithful. That's not what their names are in the series, but they've explicitly said that was to better align with the way that they'd be pronounced in these cultures. So like, why are people upset about that? Again, besides it just being a change, like it seems like that makes sense to me. If these were really, characters like really in like, who are Tibetan monks or whatever, like that's how their names would be changed. I don't know. What's your take on the names? Is it just like,
no, I agree. No, I agree. I mean, I do think it's stupid because it's different, but I agree that like, it makes sense that they would have pronounced it like that. And I would have been much more okay with that if they were more respectful of the skin tone of their actors, right?
Yeah. It makes it like even more.
It makes
like,
it more
jarring.
egregious, right? Yeah, like when they make that flip up, it's like, all right, now like wait a second, and like this, it adds to the offense, right? Like
they want to have their cake and eat it too, in a way.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
And again, it's like offensive to the. I mean, maybe not to the source material, but
I know what you mean. Yeah.
like you're taking a character, whitewashing it, and then also making the name much more Oriental, and it's like, wait a second, or like much more Eastern in a like you're making your actors way more Western, and the parts that they're playing way more Eastern, and it's like, all right, like that's like part of why it plays into like, all right, like are they mocking the show? Like is this like an intentional change, or like what was the thought process there?
It's hard to say. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan, I don't think he mocks. Like, he
No,
is not...
I don't think that they were actually mocking the series with this, right? I'm just saying that as, like, a way to play it up, I guess, and, like, because it...
No.
Because of the anger that I have towards it, right?
He's a very sincere writer and director. Like, his movies are very sincere and, like, very, like... They're not ironic. They're not, like... They're funny sometimes. Like, there's humor in them, but they're you know, there's sincerity there. There's like true love and passion for like the things he makes usually. And I think part of why this is so awkward is because you can tell that he's like checked out and getting overruled, and like he's at, like I said, a fallow period. So it seems the heart's not in it, and so it does come off a little bit like mocking, even though it's, you know, very sincere.
Right. And like having seen Signs and Sixth Sense, it's like, oh, I know this guy can make films. Right, like I know this guy.
We should
understands.
Watch The Happening.
Okay,
we should watch The Happening. Like that's
I mean, I've also seen Unbreakable by him, which I thought was pretty good. I like that too.
I haven't seen that one. Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of things which maybe he's done well in the past, which he just didn't really follow through with on this one, and like the phoning it in, right? Like maybe it's just very apparent because there is like a source material which is like so beloved. But the stark contrast between the two is like really jarring, and sort of like I like back to the racial thing, right? It seems like the care that was like given to the show within the show to like make sure that like, oh, like they're not racial stereotypes, right? The bending A makes sense, and B, like it isn't just them sort of dancing around, right? Like there's an intentionality, especially like you brought up Toph before. Like A, the fact that she's blind is really cool, and the fact that it adds to her character instead of detracting. And they sort of more
complex. Yeah.
Right. And they play into that with different things, and they're not afraid to make jokes about it. Not in like a cruel way either. They're just like she's blind, right?
It's
and
part
like,
of her character,
right. And they forget about that because she is so like capable, and she does like to sort of fend for herself, and that's a lot of her character arc, right? But back to the intentionality of her actions, right? When you watch her earthbend, right, and she has that sort of like mantis style, each of her movements corresponds to something that's happening, and they all make sense, right? Versus a lot of the earthbending, Aang's sort of waterbending at the end. Like there's examples where in the movie where I'm like straight up, like I said, there's good examples of like fire bending, good examples of water bending, good examples of air bending. Earthbending, it's okay. But like you have that disconnect between like what the characters' movements are and like what effect they're creating, right? Where it seems almost comical, right? I don't.
I just disagree, man. Other than the one thing you're talking about, like I really feel like
so the part at the end where Aang is creating the big
wave,
yeah, and he goes into the avatar state. It's just him like doing a dance essentially, where like I mean I know that they're not gonna like create I wish that they had made it so that the moon spirit had more of a sway upon that, especially since they were leaning more onto the sort of like spiritual aspect and like the spirit world aspect in the movie. Sort of being the Avatar's guide, yada yada, which is fine. If they're going to do that, I don't think that they had to include the statues of the previous avatars, especially because we don't see Aang connect with any of them. So like you're kind of cutting out that aspect of the Avatar, and like that's okay. Just sort of like stick to it. It feels like they weren't really clear with direction there.
That was something Christopher noticed, is that he doesn't get all big in the Avatar state. Like he just kind of hangs out there and glows. Right. I will say, I'm watching this scene now. I think he's charging up, right? Like the dancing you're talking about, like it doesn't seem incongruous with the wave he's conjuring, because he's like kind of like pulling it all out, like he's pulling the water up, and he's like kind of like gathering strength. It seems,
right,
almost more like a haka than than like the kind of stuff he usually does in the beginning, at least.
Right. I mean, I would have been maybe a little bit happier with that if it was sort of like a bit wavier, maybe. I mean, that sounds silly, I guess.
No, I know what you mean. I think part of it too is the kid's awkward. Even though the kid's obviously a talented like acrobat, I think the kid's he's not selling it very well.
Right.
Especially like in the big scenes. So
I think that's more of a choreography thing there,
you.
honestly. Because
the kid is obviously talented. Like he should be.
Like, he knows what movements he's making.
Showcase.
He's very intentional with it. I would have liked it to be I don't know if you... So, like... I don't know if you remember in the original series when Katara's like, no, you have to sort of, like, flow more with it. And she's showing Aang how to, like, waterbend right around the pirate scene. It's, like, episode 6 or 7.
Okay. How many times have you seen this show?
Twice, all the way through.
Oh, wow. Okay. You got good recall.
Because I really enjoyed it, right? Maybe 3 times. I used to watch it.
You are so defensive. Calm down. It's fine.
No, I'm actually... that's not being defensive. I'm actually, like, excited to tell you about this. I used to watch it as a kid. And so, like, I saw the season finale for the first book as it came out. I watched the show's finale as it came out on television. And as a kid who grew up without a television and had to, like, watch it either over a friend's house or, like, over my aunt's house, like, it had a really big impact on me. And, like, this was, like, really, like, an event in my life, growing up.
Sure.
Which is, again, part of the reason why I'm, like, so impassioned about it, why I've got a lot of emotion in there. And I can acknowledge that, right? Like, yeah, I really like the show. Oh, well.
You're allowed, man.
I know. I'm not, again, like, I'm sorry if I sound defensive. Like, I'm not trying to be. I don't know. What were we talking about before this?
The way that he conjures up the wave.
Oh, yeah,
and his,
yeah.
like, dancing style.
I wish that he'd sort of gone, like... I just wish he had gone sort of, like, back and forth, and I wish that they had shown, like, the push and the pull, almost, because that's just... I don't know. It just seems a lot better.
It's a little non-epic.
Yeah.
The way that it's choreographed
Because it's just him dancing and the wave is forming, right? So, again, they're like
people are reacting, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, the movements he's making are more like a... Like you said, like, jutsufied, or, like, you said something about, like, him doing, like, a hand sign jutsu earlier.
Hand jutsu.
Yeah. So it is kind of like he's just, like, he's doing, like, the signs, but the signs are, like, his bodily movement. And then the effect isn't really coming from him. It's just, like, the effect is being made on the area around him. And I guess that's, like, a stylistic change, because they do have him do the same thing sort of earlier when he was in the small bout with the Water Tribe Master, whose name I forget, amazingly. And like, sort of, like, all the water starts, like, bubbling up. Not bubbling up, but
Wait,
like... It's...
You forgot the character's name?
I know, crazy, right?
Are you even a real fan?
Yeah. And he was the one who eventually met up with Graham and married her. Oh, and I'm going to forget his name. Oh, man. And he recognized Katara off of...
Not Graham.
Not Graham. Off of the necklace that he carved for her grandma. Oh, man. Anyway.
I can't believe you
necklace.
dislike this movie more than Ansandi.
Yeah. Ansandi at least had impact.
Movies.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, is that a good thing? Clearly this movie had a fucking impact. Are you kidding me? This is the most energy you've ever brought to anything. I've seen you work out with less energy than
That's
this.
crazy. That's a crazy statement to make.
It's true.
I'm gonna watch this movie before I work out next time. I'm gonna have it playing while I work out, just so I can,
You
like,
should
get
do
angry
Zumba
with
to
it.
this movie.
Oh no, that'd be crazy. So you're comparing this to, like, 9 a.m. Zumba, though, which is, like, very different.
9:30. But
same difference. Anyway,
do you have any? I mean, obviously we're going long on this one. But,
yeah. Oh yeah.
What other thoughts you got? What haven't we talked about?
Zhao when they're in the air temple thing, which I'm fine with them sort of, like, rolling the northern air temple into a Fire Nation base, whatever. I wish he had shown off the archers earlier. Again, they could have pulled that in a very different direction. I kind of wish they had, instead of it just being like, oh, like, don't kill him, he'll just be reborn, don't kill him, nobody kill him. Oh, now that he's, like, as fucking far away as humanly possible, hit the airbender with an arrow traveling through the air. Great. Or hit the guy holding the airbender.
I was gonna say.
I know, right, my bad.
Yeah.
Hit the guy holding the airbender, like, within a very small, like, margin of error.
But I thought that was because they wanted to capture him. They wanted to capture, because he suspects it's Zuko. Because then later on, he's like, your son might be a traitor, but I don't have any proof.
Right, but he could have had this archer do this at any time. I mean, they did that in the original series, and the original series...
Are you secretly on CinemaSins?
Yeah,
Do you have a secret, like, plot hole YouTube channel?
I'm just saying, like, it doesn't make sense from a character point of view within the movie, and it also doesn't make sense from the source material. The reason why that scene sort of had impact before, and even the scene after it where you see Aang, like, put Zuko down and then run away, the reason that scene had impact before... For $5. Yeah.
Go ahead. No,
for $5 what?
No, finish your thought first. The reason that scene had impact before.
The reason that scene had impact before was the dialogue between Aang and Zuko. It's the first time that we see them talk, and it shows both of their natures, and then how Zuko's sort of fighting against his nature, but at the end of the day, he's doing what he needs, what he thinks he needs to do in order to reclaim his honor. Right.
For $5, what is the name of the protagonist from Showgirls?
Fuck. Oh my god.
I'm really pleased with myself.
Yeah.
That you don't know.
It's a shame because, like, I always get her name mixed up in my mind because it sounds like a name with, like, a syllable missing. Fuck.
It does. It is.
Yeah.
You're thinking of the name Naomi and Nomi.
It's Nomi, yeah.
Yeah.
Very unique name.
Anyway. Do you have any other final thoughts here?
I mean, no. If you want to cut me off here, that's fine.
How much? Where you got? Like, go for it.
Let me look.
We got a half hour, but.
The way that they make the reason for the Fire Nation heading to the north, about killing the spirits. Zhao mentions the spirit library and killing this moon spirit like 3 or 4 times before he does it.
Yeah.
They really sort of make him very subservient to the Fire Lord, which I guess was, I don't know, an effort to try to really push him as the big bad, and like to introduce him later. Like, fine, whatever, I guess. I wrote here, these ads are getting brutal, man. They roll it right into the Avatar talk. When they were talking about the spirits, and then like immediately afterwards, Ozai's like, and the boy traveling around. It's like, why did they not make that the focus where they're like trying to catch Aang? They could have done a lot more with like the chase, and I would have liked to see a lot more with the chase, so it like makes sense for them to be running. And
it all sucks because of the pacing, like that. All of that stuff, like where it's like there's no chase. Well, there's no time for a chase.
The pacing and the exposition is very bad, right? And like I feel like there are just exposition dumps every few minutes. It's like especially early. It's like every 10
time
minutes,
the narration
there's just
has to happen.
Even without narration, like I feel like a lot of the dialogue is just exposition dumps. I didn't really like the spirit world, the way that they introduced the spirit dragon, and then they were like, kind of implicitly, they were like, oh, like, this is going to be the only spirit that you see in this movie, and it's kind of like Aang's mentor, but don't worry about it too much. And also, Aang just, like, sort of asks Yue, like, again, it comes down to the dialogue being really clunky, and, like, when Aang was talking to Yue, he was literally like, I need to talk to the spirit dragon. Do you know where I can talk to the spirit dragon? And she's like, there's a very spiritual place in the Northern Water Temple, or Northern Water Tribe. We built our city around it. Come with me. And then, like, it just cuts to them walking
she's
through
saying
the city.
that. Well, he says he needs to meditate, and then she says, "Now you're being unfair."
He explicitly says, "I need to talk to the spirit dragon. I need to meditate."
Right. He doesn't ask where it is. He says, like, "Where can I meditate?" And then she's like, "Yeah, this whole place is really spiritual. I'll show you the most spiritual place of it all." Like, that's what she says.
Yeah, it's. I don't know.
I'm not
it's
saying
really
that's great
bland
dialogue.
and straightforward dialogue is all I'm saying.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Let's just not don't tell lies here.
On
this podcast. The movie's bad enough without having to.
I mean, I really didn't enjoy that dialogue. They say Agni Ki.
Yeah.
Which, sheesh.
Yeah, that's a little weird. Yeah, because it's not even the
Yeah.
like how you would expect that to be pronounced.
Yeah. I think it's also because they were trying to focus more on firebenders use ki, so they would use Agni ki.
Right.
But also if
Yeah.
they can't generate flames, it really doesn't make a lot of sense that they would like have a fire.
Well, but there's
duel
like
to the death.
sconces and stuff.
Right, but like
there's,
also a lot of the sconces seem single use, at least the way that they're using them.
single use.
It does. They like they grab the fire and throw it, and then like now that torch, that sconce, it's out. It's got no more. There's a couple of times that they break that convention, but it's not really coherent. So I'm not going to touch on that. I didn't like the way that they adapted the Agni Kai, that's just a nit, whatever. I really would have.
All right, give me. Go ahead.
No.
You really would have. No, you really would have. Because now you're just reading from your list.
I know.
Not very good podcasting.
Yeah, my bad. Please show, don't tell. Please show, don't tell. Please show, don't tell. I wrote that in there. And then when they went to the Northern Air Temple, or when Aang went to the Northern Air Temple by himself, I was like, they're putting in the, what is this? Now they're going to the statue route? 55 minutes? More telling and not showing? What is this, man?
Oh my God.
That was when he had the breakthrough with the dragon while enchained within
Yeah.
the Northern Air Temple. It's like, all right, fine, I guess.
But then it turns out to be a trick, which is kind of that caught me off guard.
What do you mean it's a trick?
That's when he gets. Yeah, that's how he gets kidnapped. The whole thing's a trap.
Right.
Zhao kidnaps him there.
Yeah. But he didn't. He was in chains when he communed with the dragon, which I thought was like, I don't know. They should have probably had him meditating and like had the dragon talking to him, and then been like, oh, like you're under attack, instead of having the guy be like, hey, by the way, I secretly hate you because I've been living in poverty. Fire Nation's here to take you away. I don't know, just odd to me.
I don't think he's saying he hates him, right? He's like
the guy kind of says that. He's like, hey, forgive me, but like you caused me to live my life in poverty.
Yeah.
Like whatever, I guess. I mean, delivering someone unto death is an act of hate in my mind. So, Zhao, when he pulled up and he had the receipts, and he was like, "You've only been using airbending." I've noticed in all of the reports. It's like, all right, that's kind of silly. Doesn't really need to be added. And I get that they were adding it so that it was like, oh, this is why Zhao needs to be deployed to the north. I understand that, but I don't know. I feel like it's again sort of like talking down to the audience. Whatever.
Well, movies have less. I mean, part of it is because movies don't have as much time to explain these things in general. And this movie is communicating a whole lot about a very new world and a very kind of complex world. So of course it's going to be a little more straightforward than a TV show that has literally like 60 hours to tell this story versus an hour and a half.
No, and I get that, but like,
I feel like it's uncharitable to be like, well, he points out something that the audience knows. It's like,
right.
Well,
I think they should have just cut that, right? And I think it should have just been, oh, Zhao is heading to the north to chase the Avatar, right? Like it should have been that he's like, oh, hey, I've been tracking the Avatar's movements. It seems like he's headed to the Northern Water Tribe.
You have ideas about what it should have been, but like,
no, I know, I get
what about
that.
what it is?
Right, what it is bad, and I dislike it. Right?
Okay, remind me to never like bring a movie that you hate. We cannot talk about movies you hate on this podcast because this is unbelievable the way that you have been talking today.
I mean, I did kind of try to tell you that like it was going to be like this, right? Like maybe I didn't.
You told me
fully
that you would be
explicitly
fired up.
warn you.
I didn't know that you were going to write a 5-paragraph essay that you would then read over the course of 90 minutes.
You're lucky we're not touching on Korra. All right, that's all I'm gonna say. All right.
Oh my god. High level. Do you have anything else you want to say from your notes? I'm not going to go through the rest of
We
like
can't go through the
minute
rest of
by
my
minute.
notes. That's crazy.
Listen, we have been talking at this point for longer than the duration of the fucking movie.
I know,
So
it's
like
great.
that's crazy. We're wrapping it up. I'm pulling out my giant shepherd's hook.
The slow-mo scenes are the best parts of the movie. Fire Nation soldiers are all stormtroopers.
True. Fair.
Can I please just touch on a couple more things as I'm
Oh my god, Ricky.
reading through this?
Okay, but I will remember this day is what I'm going to say here.
That's fine. So Sokka, when he first sees the I get that they like where they were playing up I get that they were playing him up as the heartthrob, but he's got that Edward Cullen type attraction. Like when when Katara's doing the voiceover and introducing the princess, like he is
Yeah.
just staring her down. Also the
Yeah,
shot
he's never seen a woman before.
facts. The shot of them like walking into the northern water temple, or I don't even know what to call it.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
like
the kingdom, the water,
Yeah.
the ending place.
Yeah. pretty clunky. I would have liked. It's just the fact that it's focused on them and their reaction to like what they're seeing, but we don't get to see it, which is like, I don't know. It's
We do get to see it. What are you talking about? We're seeing
In
these
that
huge
scene?
glaciers when they're first like coming up, and she's like narrating and saying like, "We're going to the water temple, and then
yeah,
we
but
met Yue, and my brother loved her."
We don't see the temple as like they're walking in, right? It's literally like a shot of them like the gates, or like the ice like
Well, I
gates
don't
sort
think
of
there's a
lowering and then
temple.
like
It's a whole
building up
city,
behind them.
right?
Yeah, it is. It is a city, but when they're entering the city, I would have liked to see the city and not like them and their reactions upon entering it, and then just like certain locales within the city, right?
I'm watching it now. We do see it though. There's a whole wide shot of them, like as the benders like ice up the wall that they come through, or the like little doorway that they come
But
through.
It's
it
after we
scans across.
Yeah, it scans across.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. It's like an awkward angle for me, at least. I wasn't a big
And
fan
then-
of that.
no, but
I would
then-
have liked to
then
see
there's
it from
another-
behind them. Then there's another.
There's another wide shot of them, yeah, where they're walking up and you see the whole city behind them and on the sides.
Right. When they're
Man,
walking
you
into
are
like
crazy.
when they're
This is
walking into the
crazy.
this is crazy, when they're walking into the, I'll call it the war chamber, to talk to the That's
yeah,
fine.
where they're talking to like the king or whatever and the princess. Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, before that too, there's like a whole like the waterbenders are like icing it up, and then you see the whole city in the background, and they aren't even in that shot. It's like,
yeah. When you see like a bunch of the water tribe people, and then like the city in the
you were
background.
like,
Yeah,
you
that's
went
okay.
into
That's
this
fine.
rubbing your hands together. You were like,
I
what
know,
can
I
I
was.
fucking complain about in this movie?
Yeah, I did.
You are noticing things you have never noticed in a movie before.
So
You're pulling out terms.
when we see
Go ahead.
Katara waterbending against Zuko, it's pretty good. I wish we had been able to see Katara using waterbending earlier, and especially during like the sort of training sequences. I totally understand cutting her fiery nature, cutting her getting mad about the.
Yeah,
like,
her
the
character is
teachers.
kind of boring.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, like obviously they had to gut all of the characters, and that's kind of fine, right?
Right.
But like she's an exposition bot at like so many times, and it's really kind of sad to see. But like judging it just based off of like as a movie, right? Like Sokka doesn't do anything at all, which is like
I'm trying to remember what he even does in the end,
nothing.
like other than cry and kiss the princess because she turns into the moon.
Yeah. There's like some weird banter between them, which was like even cringier than.
It's cute, actually.
Wow.
Oh, I liked it. I thought that was like one of the only moments that like was nice and kind of like
Yue carried
reminiscent
that.
of the movie.
Yue carried that. She was the only one who.
Oh, for sure. He was
yeah.
just staring. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
like
that woman looks like she has chemistry with like a, you know.
she would have chemistry with a brick wall, and luckily they
Yeah.
found the only brick wall to play Sokka. I'm surprised you're not saying that that's too much of a dig, but okay.
No, you could. At least it was funny, and you're not just like, this fucking sucks. This is the worst thing ever. This is actually offensive against my TV show.
When they're flirting,
My
like,
my Sokka body pillow is offended.
she was like playing with him, like just like teasing him, and he goes,
Yeah.
"My grandma would talk your ear off." And like that's it,
Yeah.
and then like there's an awkward pause, and she's like, "Oh, like what would she talk about?" And he's like, anything. And then like Yue was like, all right, I gotta be the one carrying the combo, and she like went in on it, which is like fine.
Well,
I mean,
that's because
she
men
was
suck. Yeah.
like, again, it's just like it's bad dialogue, but like I don't know why their relationship had to be maintained. I mean, I feel like that definitely could have been cut. I would have been fine with having her.
Oh, there has to be a little bit of romance in it, I guess, and it allows the whole like the spirits are gonna die, and she has to sacrifice herself. Like having all of that in there adds to that. You need to seed the reason that they're interested in, or that it's so dramatic when she dies. You know,
right? I think it would. I mean, it would have been fine, at least in my eyes, just to have like the princess of the Northern Water Tribe die. Right? Like that would have been impactful, especially if like any of the other side characters, like the other Border Nation, not troops, but like warriors, or her father were like sort of present at all there. Like that would have been a welcome change in my eyes. Also, the fact that the spot where Aang is meditating versus where the like the koi pond is like different. I'm not the biggest fan of it because it's just them moving between locales, and like again they do that sort of sloppily. Iroh explicitly tells Zuko, "Hey, like the fire breath thing," and Zuko doesn't really. He uses it a little bit after Aang freezes him, like, which is okay, fine. I wrote here, damn, Yue is carrying this shit. She glazing Sokka for real. He's done nothing in this movie at all. Like, he hasn't done a single thing. Yeah. They make this so dramatic, like, girl. I said that for when the Fire Nation was fucking tunneling up through the ice to get in. It
was pretty cool, that part.
That's okay.
Yeah, I like when Zuko was like on his own tunneling in, I had to like remember to breathe. I as a person who does not, as a person of hating water experience. So
Zuko coming in was cool. I enjoyed that, but the rest of them are just seen as like they have these like weird like tunneling devices that they like spin up through the ice.
That was cool. Yeah, and then they have the giant salamanders that are like climbing the walls.
I like the giant salamanders. I at least
love a beast.
Love a beast. In my eyes, it would have been cooler, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, like the movie had to do it this way, but I think it sort of takes a like in the show, it was like, oh, like this is such a crazy thing that Zuko could do, like that's and like it has a lot of impact because it's like, oh, that's badass, like this is something that like only someone like A, he got really close to death, he like was running out of air, and B, like he had like really good breath control for that, and he uses his like flame breath to sort of like heat himself back up after being in like the icy water. And now it's like, oh, just like any old Fire Nation troop could do that, right? Really, anyone could do that at all. They can just sort of do that.
Yeah, but he did it on his own, you know. So it's
right,
like
and
different.
I mean, all of them did it by themselves. They were all independently going under the city.
Independently in a group, though, like they were all together.
Yeah, but they can't help each other.
He was just on his own,
right? Like
no, but there's a difference between
breathing apparatuses.
Ricky, all right, wrap it the fuck up,
no,
okay?
I'm just saying,
do you have anything else?
No, I'm just saying you take away the impact with that. And, like, I feel like they removed a lot of the impact of scenes through that, right?
You have never said anything, you've never said even a fraction of this much about any other movie we've talked about.
All right.
It is crazy. You have so many fucking takes about every single scene in this.
Yes, because
nuts.
Because I have, like, an idea of what I would have liked to see in mind, and they betray it at every angle. I said, okay, stepping up the bending here, but I'm hating the camera angles.
Final thoughts? Final thoughts. We're wrapping it up. It's quarter till. I gotta fucking leave and go see Toon.
More map presence,
we're
especially
wrapping.
in the chase sequence montage, would have been appreciated. I would have liked to see, like actually have a view of the map. It would have been cool if they had like done maybe a little.
Oh, my God! They didn't show enough map. All right. We're done here. We're fucking done.
It means there's like no sense of movement. They had good grappling near the end. Like the guy who plays Aang, like he knew how to grapple well. And like the Zuko and Aang grappling is actually like pretty decent. Like they do pretty well there.
Okay, on that note, they do pretty well there. That's Ricky's review of this movie. 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Yeah, pretty easily.
Wait, do you agree that this is a 2 out of 5 movie?
Yeah, I'd call it 2 out of 5. Yeah.
2 out of 5 isn't the lowest that 5 stars goes. Oh my God.
So you cut out for me for like all of that. I'm assuming that you're speaking at either an outrageous volume or at
I'm
such a
just yell into
tone
the mic
that only like dogs and dolphins would be able to hear you at this point. Glass is shattering for blocks around you.
Yeah. The 2 out of 5 is not the worst a movie can be.
Yeah, but it's the worst
Okay.
movie that I've ever seen. Like,
all right, well, we're gonna fill in the 0 to 2 gaps here on this podcast.
I would never give a
at
movie
some
a 0,
point.
but we can fill in the 1 to 2 gap, sure.
The half star to 5. Okay, but so that was the fucking Last Airbender movie. Not that bad, but a bad movie. Moving on. Next is a Rick's pick. Does Rick have a pick?
Nah, God, no. Rick does not have a pick.
Oh my God. All right, well, hurry up because we got 12 minutes here. Time's a wasting. Do you want me to send you the list?
No, I'm pulling it
I
up
bet
right
Christopher's laughing his ass off in the other room at what he's hearing.
now. Time is not a wasting, by the way. This movie was a waste of time.
Oh my god.
So like as far as
You
like
need the list?
as far as cheesy action movies from like the mid 2000s go, right?
No, we have to pivot. We're pivoting. We have to pivot. We cannot do another movie like this.
I'm just
We
saying.
can't.
No, I'm just saying. Think of Speed Racer and think of this movie, right?
Yeah, Speed Racer is by two of the most incredible filmmakers of our time. Like that's but it's different. It's just different.
You're right. You're right. I can't. I
Also,
shouldn't- I
people
shouldn't
hate
compare
Speed
it.
Racer.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Like people, also at the time thought Speed Racer was trashy garbage. So, anyway, okay. What is Rick's pick? What is Richard's Pickard?
Richard's Pickard. It's gonna sound like a dartboard throw, but do you want to watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Have you seen it?
No.
I'll watch that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Is that on the list? I don't.
It
even
is on the
remember.
list.
That was on the Ricky Kino 101 list
Okay.
from a long time ago.
I've been told to watch this movie by one of my priests long in the past, so it's
Ooh,
it's between
interesting.
that or God. Okay, well, I lost that. I lost what I was gonna say. Never mind. I guess it's just
Do
this
you want
one.
me to read the?
It's
Is it another movie on this list?
it's not on the
or-
list, and it's one that I haven't seen. So like now that it's into the ether, it's just gone.
Okay. Well, we can watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'm into it.
Okay.
A religious angle, if that's why your priest was suggesting it. That's an interesting angle to take this movie.
No,
So-
it was just a movie that they liked. You're just
Oh, sure.
BSing talk about movies a while ago.
Hey.
So like years and years
Good.
ago. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't seen this movie in a while, so that's yeah, I'm into it. Cool.
the suggestion I was going to make is, well, with the Naked Gun being reboot, I think we should watch that. Maybe not now, but like eventually. Have you seen
I'm
Naked
into
Gun
the
or
Naked
Airplane?
Gun. We could. I have not. I've seen Airplane. Watched that movie Stoned.
Okay.
Almost
Yeah,
died
hell
from
yeah.
laughing. Like that movie was
Yeah, so good.
really funny. The Naked Gun. Yeah, I'd be into either of those.
I think some jokes
Yeah.
from the Naked Gun like don't land as well anymore.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I think we've spoken before about like some of the issues that were like present during that time in filmmaking. But we can, if you want to watch it, I really liked it growing up, and I haven't seen it in a long time. But I'm sure it's still pretty funny.
I'm into either. Yeah, I'm cool with either. I mean, Body Snatchers is like an all-time great horror movie. Really cool stuff in there. Naked Gun, I haven't seen it, but people like it, and it's 86 minutes long, so I'm down for either of those.
Let's go Naked Gun. It's a comedy, so it's like
Okay.
definitely lighter fare. It's nothing for me to rant about.
You're talking about
Actually,
like
things
this
for me to,
kids
like, speak
movie
praises
isn't like
about.
fair.
Yeah, well, I mean, we touched on it that they were going for like a more serious
Yes.
tone,
Okay.
and it
All
sort
right.
of,
All right.
like,
So
kills
next week we're gonna watch The Naked Gun from 1988, directed by David Zucker, who also did, I think, some of the Scary Movies. So interesting
okay.
stuff there. But
Neat.
if you want more rants from Ricky, you subscribe to his Patreon, so you can get or his Substack. Actually, Substack is where you rant.
It's only rant content on there. It is just hours and hours of
God.
me monologuing.
It's not good for your heart, man. You gotta.
I'm not
gotta
even
tone
like
it down.
that worked up. I know you like. I don't know if you're like playing this up or anything. Like if you're trying to get laughs here.
I'm like half and half, man. No, I mean, well, God, if this was just two people yelling at each other like you are acting, this wouldn't be a very fun podcast. So, my God,
All right. I mean, I don't know.
Jesus. You know, it's not often that I get to play the
straight
goofball
man.
in comparison to your straight man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, sheesh. Isn't OJ in The Naked Gun?
He is.
We'll talk about OJ next week. All right.
Yeah, this is
next
before
week,
he.
our mini series on OJ. Yeah.
He actually gets like
all
phased
that.
out a little bit of the later ones, specifically because it was right around the Nicole
Uh-huh.
Kidman stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Nicole Kidman.
Was his wife? Wait, never mind. Not Nicole Kidman. The stuff with his wife. I don't know. My bad.
Nicole Simpson. Anyway.
Simpson.
Yeah. The stuff with his wife.
Right. The Simpsons.